Welcome back to the Loco Experience. My guest today is Travis Luther, and Travis is a sociologist, a researcher, a writer, a speaker, a multi-time entrepreneur, and the founder of Time to Live, LLC.
Yeah.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Thanks for coming up from Denvertown.
Yeah, of course.
How was the drive?
Easy peasy.
Easy peasy.
Yeah, it'll probably be a little harder going home,
Yeah.
hitting rush hour. I don't know which direction that goes, but I suspect it won't be a smooth sailing.
Yeah, probably not. Although I think there's probably fewer people going back to Denver from Fort Collins at 5 than there is going, back home to Fort Collins.
True.
I would suspect. I don't know.
Very true.
I haven't really tried it either way.
Very true.
Like,
Although
knock on wood.
270 is unforgiving of anyone in any direction. So
Anytime. virtually.
once I get back down there, I mean, I will be screwed.
There
at
will
some
be a
point.
rough
Yeah,
patch.
exactly.
There's always a rough
Exactly.
patch. Well, thanks for making your way up. And you mentioned the word when we were just chatting just now, retired.
Yes.
I wondered, and this is like a next chapter of life in this researching and sociologist titling.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that.
Yeah. I mean, retired, I say kind of tongue in cheek, but I've had the good fortune of being able to have the last couple years off, mostly because I've been in non-compete since I sold my companies. So, in addition to all those things you talked about, I am at my heart and core an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I owned a number of businesses. And then over the last 3 or 4 years, I sold those businesses and was able to kind of return to another path I had been on in my life, which is academia and research and sociology. So early in my entrepreneurial career, I had a previous career as a musician, like touring all over the country, making records and stuff.
Okay.
And so I kind of came back to college later, after that career wound down.
I see. That's why it will explain some of the time gaps in your LinkedIn profile.
Yeah,
even.
exactly. So they don't have a occupation for rock star, but that
Can we go there? What kind of rock star were you? And were you a proper rock star, or
I
just?
mean, I often describe it as like AAA, right? If you know baseball,
sure.
right? Like we toured, we had vehicles.
You made more than $50,000 a year, but not much.
Maybe more closer to the 30,000.
Right. This was a while back.
This
I
was
guess.
early.
In today's dollars, it would be 50.
Maybe,
theoretically.
yeah. But early 2000s. Went down to L.A., which is actually where I was born and where most of my family is.
Okay.
Tried to make it down there. Had some fun times.
And what was the band? One band, or was it you a solo?
It was
guy,
me at that point trying to put a band together.
Okay.
Did not have a lot of success. I had some fun times. I gotta hang out with Tom Morello. I got to play with him and Adam Jones from Tool. I got to actually jam with those guys, which was like a lot of fun and very encouraging. But never really got anything done. So I went back to Seattle.
Okay.
I grew up in Washington State. My parents were divorced, so my mom left California, went to Washington, but went back to Seattle, and then started having all the success I thought I might have in Los Angeles.
Interesting. Now, remind me. So this was like after the proper grunge band days.
Yeah,
and stuff,
definitely.
right? This is another wave.
Yeah, this was another wave. This was kind of now the post grunge. We're kind of getting into that pop punk, Vans Warped Tour, emo kind of genre, and so we definitely fell right into that kind of Warped Tour sound for sure.
All right.
So
so you spun that thing for 5 years or something?
Yeah.
Maybe college.
I found a way to hack out a living doing that. I did, one of my earlier businesses was actually a music promotion company. I had a record label that I put my band and my other friends' bands on.
Oh, okay.
But then what we would do is we would make these compilation discs. So we'd go around to independent record companies or independent artists and say, hey, we've made deals with all these record stores. They're going to allow us to put free CD samplers in every bag of every customer. They're going to allow us to put you in their listening station so that customers can hear your records where they might not otherwise be able to. And you're going to pay us a fee for that spot on this CD compilation. And so we did that for a couple years.
Okay.
And that helped support the music as well.
A little bit of cash flow positive there for
and of course,
a lot of hours of work hustling. But you're going to those record stores anyway, right?
Right. Yeah. And I worked at one of them. So that was kind of how I got the idea and got the in.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I put my band and my friend's band.
And this is up in Seattle.
This is in Seattle, yeah. As the first three or four tracks on each sampler, so we got a little special treatment and exposure. But I was coming off 4 or 5 years of that. We opened for some great bands. We had some great tours. We just never quite got there ourselves.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking about, all right, what am I going to do next? Good friend of mine had moved to Denver, said, why don't you just come out here, see what you want to do, just take a break, and
Change of scenery, blank page, basically.
Exactly.
You didn't have any strings to speak of.
Exactly. And so, there was a music industry, what did they call it? The music industry and business studies major at
Okay.
University of Colorado, Denver.
Okay.
And so I said, okay, well, that might be a good segue to law school. I thought maybe I'll become an entertainment lawyer and I'll work on the legal side of music.
Yeah.
So I joined that program. Actually,
Get a job for Diddy or something.
maybe
not.
if I just could have been lucky enough to work for Diddy. Right. But actually, the Fray, all the guys from the Fray were in my class, and
cool.
It was right. It was right. They had recorded a couple songs.
Oh, wow.
They were,
So you kind of watched them blow up.
Oh, totally. And I remember lecturing them. I remember lecturing one of them because I was saying, oh, I've tried this. I've done this for 5 years. No band just records
just
a song,
happen.
does a showcase, and gets a
Right.
record deal. But sure as shit, that's exactly what happened to them. So I remember kind of warning them, well, this might be a longer process than you think, because they're like, oh, well, we're going out to do this showcase for a record label. And I, in the back of my mind, was like, well, I love your enthusiasm, but good luck.
Yeah,
But, I
yeah.
mean, they did it.
One of the coolest concerts I've been to was a New Year's Eve show with the Lumineers.
Yeah.
And it was the I guess December, immediately after they won the Grammy in November or whatever the Grammys are, and it was just so authentic. They were like, when our manager told us he booked us for the Fox Theater, we were like, oh shit, how the hell are we ever going to fill the Fox Theater?
Yeah.
And we were part of a second night even that they added.
Oh,
They're
wow.
like, now we filled it twice.
Wow.
It's been quite a roll.
Yeah.
But same kind of thing, just meteoric.
yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
nowhere to everywhere.
Yeah, and they're great stories, but they are super unusual.
Totally.
I spent so many years.
Well, they might have had 10 years
Yeah,
before
True,
that
true,
I never heard of them.
true,
You know,
true.
I don't know.
But I spent a lot of years on the road seeing just the most incredible bands and musicians that nobody would ever.
They're
hear
all in
of.
AA and AAA.
Yeah, and
Yep,
it's there's a lot of luck that comes with that. That's not to take credit from anyone, but
Sure.
there's luck, there's timing, there's just so
Well,
much
and
more
powerful people that become the pickers sometimes,
Exactly,
and
exactly.
depends on how your personality jives
Yeah.
and your pliability sometimes, perhaps.
Yep.
So you go into this potential law track, understanding the music industry.
Yeah, that's what I thought I was gonna do. And then my kind of entrepreneurial insides started coming back outside, and it just did not feel like a good fit. I was working at night as a valet down in Cherry Creek while I was in that program.
Pretty good gig.
It was a pretty
You
good
drive
gig.
really cool
Oh,
cars.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Super cool cars. In fact, I'll tell a story at the end of the podcast
right.
for one of those questions that you asked about crazy,
Sure, Loco
crazy
Experience.
stories. Yeah. But anyway, I was, passing out these valet tickets to all these rich people in Mercedes and Ferraris and Porsches and stuff. And I got this idea, like, I wonder if I could sell advertising on the blank side of these valet tickets. And so I asked the guy who owned the valet company if he would mind me going out and trying to do that. And he said, sure, you can go try and do it, but no one's going to buy it. And it's going to be too expensive. And I said, okay, well, if you don't care and you think I'm not going to be successful,
Right.
would you mind if I went to the other valet companies too to see if I could roll everybody up into this idea and give them all free valet tickets? He said, go do whatever you want. So I went to the other valet companies. I got them all on board. And within 2 weeks, I had a deal with Mercedes-Benz to put a lease offer on the backside. And so that moment,
Because you didn't just try to sell one to Mercedes. You put a coalition together where
yeah.
Mercedes is like, oh shoot, we're gonna get in front of a lot of eyeballs.
oh yeah, I was like, look, I can put these in the hands of 5,000 to 10,000 rich people a month. Like literally put your ad right in the hands of
Right.
people who valet park, right?
Right.
Like, it solved a good problem for trying to reach, educated and affluent demographic.
Right. Well, especially the people that are trying not to be reached.
Yeah, sure. right?
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's cool.
And then you're leaving an ad on their keys. You're leaving an ad on their dashboard, right?
Sure.
Because you valeted, so you're leaving these deals you're littering their car with these deals. And so that really took off for me, and that kind of gave me a little pause in that moment of, Man, law school is something I think I want to do because I don't really have another good idea about what I should do. And entrepreneurship and creativity and creating these cool ideas is
Yeah.
something I really love.
Yeah.
And so that company, like I said, within a few months, like I had the Nuggets, the Avalanche,
Dang.
Maserati. I had tons and tons of
Oh,
clients.
interesting.
I had a backlog, luxury apartment builders and condo builders.
Dang.
And so
Start charging more and more, I imagine, as
yeah,
well.
yeah, exactly.
Did you like do like a variety of them then, or you promised so many handouts? Or
Yeah,
was it little
exact-
tiny tickets?
No,
or-
no, they were big. They're big. They were like 7 or 8 inches long. I mean,
Okay.
they were really big.
So like a
They-
flyer virtually.
Mhm, it was like-
Proper.
yeah, exactly. And because the valet ticket has to be split into a number of parts too,
Oh,
right?
sure.
So one goes on the keys, one goes on the dashboard, one goes to
Oh,
the
beautiful.
customer, and then
Yeah, yeah.
you tear the part of from the customer ticket when they return
Right.
the car. So there's lots of places to, like I said, litter the.
Yeah. How much were those actual valet tickets? Do you remember
What did
they
they
were
cost me?
per item? Yeah. Were
I
they like
charged
a buck a piece.
I charged $20,000
Okay.
for a package. And I don't remember exactly how many tickets in there, but it cost me about $3,000 to print.
Okay.
So I was
You did
doing
okay
well.
just on the tickets, and that doesn't count all the sponsorships and stuff.
So, and then I got like trade. So like the Nuggets and the Avalanche gave me courtside
Right.
tickets, tickets on the glass.
Yeah, you're
and-
rolling.
Oh, and here I
Fringe
am,
benefit
and I'm
lad.
in undergrad, right? And I'm like, I don't really know anybody, so I'm asking these other 19, 20-year-olds if they want to go to a Nuggets game with me, and then the four of us sit courtside, and they're
Right.
like, who the hell is this
Right.
guy? So,
You're rolling all big and stuff
yeah.
besides.
And then I got a Mercedes, so yeah, it was a wild time, a fun time, but it reignited in me this like, hey man, you're an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
like, and doing your own thing and coming up with your own businesses and your own companies is what you're.
And do you
passionate
consider
about.
this researcher, writer, speaker another entrepreneurial venture?
Yeah,
is it-
for sure.
I mean, it is certainly, right? 'Cause
Yeah.
not just anybody can hire you and pay you a proper
Yeah.
amount to come
Yeah.
and talk to them and stuff.
Yeah. So I mean, that's kind of the segue. Is like, so I left that program. I entered another program. I transferred over to MSU Denver for a reason of residency. I couldn't get my residency with CU, so MSU was going to give
MSU's
it
like,
to
I
me.
don't care, yeah.
Right, and I just wanted to finish. Right.
Right.
At that point, I
Yep.
just wanted to finish my degree. But what happened was I took a sociology class as one of my last. In the last
Sort of
year,
capstone course
yeah,
almost,
yeah,
or-
and just fell in love with it. I mean, really did. It
Yeah.
explained a lot of things to me about how the structure of society really dictates the direction a lot of our lives go. And
Yeah.
as someone who had struggled a lot, I had teen
Well,
parents.
that's so crazy
yeah.
that you struggled a lot, and then you just kind of intuited this like potential value proposition out of that valet ticket industry and turning a cost into a value. Even
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I had other businesses before that. I had a couple coffee
Oh,
shops.
fair.
I had a skateboard and snowboard shop. I
Yeah,
had the
but
record label.
That's a little different.
Well, it was different. And those all failed spectacularly.
Well, because they weren't entrepreneurial enough.
They
weren't-
didn't solve a problem.
Yeah.
And so that's
the
what
world doesn't need more coffee.
Right, exactly. So I thought, oh, well, I like hanging out at coffee shops. I should open a coffee shop. Thus, it will be successful because I like it. Right? And that was a big lesson I learned in the transition from those companies from back home to what I did at Valet Ads was it's not always about what you love, right? I loved skateboarding and I owned a skateboard shop. Well, that
Yeah.
didn't work. I loved going to coffee shops, so I owned a couple coffee shops. That didn't work. But, then I have this idea like, oh, I can solve this problem by putting ads in the hands of rich people from luxury companies,
Yeah.
right? Well, that solved a real problem, and that's why it was so
So you go to
successful
coffee
so
shops
fast.
as much as you want.
That's right. Without having to
In your
own 'em.
Mercedes.
In my Mercedes. That's right. So that was the big aha moment for me was that I was also successful because I had learned a lot about business that I probably couldn't articulate in those previous years, but I did come to understand why my businesses had failed.
Yeah.
And I applied those lessons to Valet Ads and then everything that came after that. And so back to
Back to sociology.
yeah, back to
and
sociology.
passion.
So, in school, while I owned Valet Ads, I took these sociology courses, totally fell in love with it. I was interested in marketing personally, and I thought sociology is a much better fit for me and marketing than anything else I was doing because it explains people, it
Yeah, yeah.
explains structure. And so even though I was successful in business when I finished my undergrad, I didn't want to stop. I wanted to keep going.
Yeah.
And so I applied for grad school. for sociology. I went to CU Denver, and 3/4 through that program, I got approached about joining a PhD program upstairs in public affairs because I had taken a couple of those courses too. Had a couple of
Professor
professors.
thought you were smarter than normal
Yeah,
and stuff.
which was flattering as hell. Really, I mean, it really was. And so I applied to that
It's funny, I hate to say it,
Yeah.
but you're like a big muscular dude, and kind of one just kind of assumes that dudes like you aren't as smart.
No, that's right.
I'm sorry to say it, but even me,
I
like
agree.
as a big, slim, non-muscular dude, I'm like, well, I think I could beat me up, but at least I'm smarter than he is. But now I'm not so sure.
That's funny.
Anyway,
That's
keep
funny.
going. I'm sorry.
But yeah,
That's cool to be and honoring, right? After kind
very.
of struggling a bit with
yeah.
your early
Yeah.
college, early career,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
this and then the band stuff,
Yeah,
and nobody likes
yeah.
your coffee that much.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
You know?
And I my mom got pregnant with me when she was 15. I grew up in poverty. I was very self-conscious my entire life about my status in the world, right? Very self-conscious. Always felt people were like looking down on me. And so entering academia and having some people say like, "Hey, you're really smart."
Did you have the tattoos and stuff already too?
I did have
Most
a
of
lot
them.
of them, but
Yeah.
that same self-esteem issue that I tried to describe also, in school I was a lot more guarded, right? And especially if I was in my grad program or whatever, I thought a lot about how do I look and how do I appear because I want people to take me seriously.
Yeah, yeah. And I want to get back to there too. That was the question I just wrote down was how much did your family background and having that early breakup of your parents in your life, and how did that all, how much of that played into
Yeah.
your eventual passion for sociology?
Yeah. Oh, all of it.
And so we can come back to that.
Sure.
'Cause we'll jump in the time machine, but
Yeah.
it's interesting that we were kind of getting to the same
Yeah.
place.
Oh, for sure. I mean that's why I loved it, right? It explained
Yeah.
so much about me
Yeah.
that I couldn't explain before.
Yeah.
Like why is my life always seem to be a dead end, right? And like in sociology, I could start
well, and
to
the valet business kind of helped break you out of that
Sure.
as well. Like, right, as a double horse team, kind
Yep.
of the success, including financial success, finally,
yeah.
alongside being recognized in an academic fashion.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. Yeah, so I got accepted to that PhD program. But my business, I had another business that I had started from that.
Okay.
A legal technology company. Again, I solved a problem for lawyers who needed technology. It wasn't anything I ever thought I was going to do, but I started dating a lawyer. I eventually married her, and she encouraged me to take my special skill set and apply it to lawyers because there wasn't anybody doing
There were a
that.
bunch of old dudes that didn't have any tech involved.
Didn't know
in
anything
their
about
practice.
tech, didn't know anything
Barely
about
got a
business,
website.
didn't know anything about digital technology, and so it was a perfect fit for my skill set at that time and grew much faster, much more
Like
profitably.
you hired a bunch of people and stuff, or were you?
I took the guy or
fulfilling a lot
two
of
that
it?
was working for me at Valet Ads, and I said to him, I said, look, we're going to start this side company called Lawfather as a joke. I said as a joke, right? And why are we calling it Lawfather? Because my favorite movie is The Godfather,
just
and
thinking that.
I can't think of anything else, right? And I said, the reason we're going to do this is because when lawyers call, we want to act like we have a company that just focuses on lawyers, even though we kind of do all sorts of marketing stuff. And within months, again, it was this scenario in which
Just this
I didn't have enough
intuition.
people. I didn't have enough time. I had so many, it just grew very fast. And so my focus switched from Valet Ads to Lawfather because I saw even more potential there.
Yeah. And did you maintain valet ads, or did you sell it
I
eventually?
did. I maintained it for a while. It kind of went the way of Blockbuster Video in the sense that with the launch of Uber and Lyft, valet, there was a lot less
far fewer
demand for
people.
valet.
Why were we going to take the car downtown?
Exactly. And so the numbers that I could do before that could really show great exposure for your product or your
Right.
service were much lower.
Yeah, now you're just kind of screwing around for way less money, and you're like, let's.
And a lot of the valet ended up just being at hotels and stuff, and that's transient people who aren't going to stay and buy season tickets to the Nuggets or a luxury condo
Totally.
downtown. So
Yeah, interesting.
It just kind of died naturally, but I did keep it for a long time
Yeah.
as this kind of background thing where I only took the calls of people who wanted to do a deal. I didn't do any selling, and I still probably made $30,000-$40,000 a year in profit
Yeah.
just answering the phone on it.
Yeah.
So. But yeah, so I got invited to a PhD program, did a couple credits in there, but Lawfather was just really blowing up. And so I was kind of dealing with this scenario where I'd have 5 employees who needed my attention for projects. I have 5 customers who needed my attention for services. And then I had, 2 or 3 professors trying to remind me that I had a 50-page or 100-page paper due like in 2 weeks, right? And I remember I
gotta give.
Yeah, exactly. I got to like the winter break and just said, I can't do all of this. I got to decide, do I want to stay on this academic route or do I want to stay in entrepreneurship?
Could you have hired a professional manager for Lawfather by that point?
I don't think I was sophisticated enough to
Didn't know you could actually find those people.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
you were making a ton of cash,
Yes.
right? Like you could have paid somebody $8,000 a month or something like that.
Yes.
Kept your PhD track on.
Yes.
Track.
But I was the owner, right? And so I didn't understand that other people could do that, right? I had never grown an enterprise before.
Right.
I had only these kind of owner-operator businesses.
Yeah.
And so that...
With like one helper or whatever, right?
Yeah. So that
All
in itself was a change that came later. I definitely recognize that.
Well, and the opportunity is staring you in the face, and you can always go back for your PhD, probably.
Right.
If you decide to.
Right. Yeah.
Even still.
Yeah. So I kind of tucked my tail between my legs. I went back down to the sociology department and I said, hey, can I finish this thesis and get out of here with my master's? And they said, sure. So I worked over the summer to do that. And then, moved on to business. Yeah. So then I enter academia a few years later, again, when MSU launches this student...
This Metro State.
Yeah. The student business incubator program. And a minor in entrepreneurship. So this was their kind of first foray into academic entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
Someone who I had gone to school with knew that I had gone on to start a number of businesses, had been successful. She reached out to me and simply asked me if I would come down and be a mentor to the students who were in the incubator program. And within 2 weeks, she had hired me to teach 3 classes. Yeah, exactly.
Of the program.
I mean, the semester after that, I was
How does the title dean sound?
I know. Yeah. So it was really a fast evolution, and I absolutely became like the top person in the program. I taught 3 out of the 4 required courses. It was very successful. They eventually decided to turn it into a full-on major, and,
cool.
and because of accreditation and stuff, they kind of shut it down for a year while they retooled it. And at that point, I think that was
yeah.
I
love this.
I thought I was going to do it for a semester or 2, right? And I ended up doing it for almost 4 years, I think.
And you're growing Lawfather on the side?
Lawfather. I launched Queen Anne Pillow Company, and I just start Trial Line, my software company.
Okay.
So I'm doing a lot.
So were you a software expert?
Not at all.
So what problem did that company solve?
So, Lawfather evolved from its initial launch of just being a web development and online marketing company to kind of a full-service digital consultancy, mostly focused on helping lawyers give better presentations in trial.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so we would sit in trial and run all their exhibits and demonstratives, but we would also create exhibits and demonstratives. Like
You're making PowerPoints for them.
And 3D animations and also
wow.
and then a lot of graphic timelines.
Okay.
And so we would make these big poster boards of timelines of a case.
Sure.
So that the jury could see different...
This is where he started going crazy.
Yeah.
This is what happened after that. And then this is where he went all the way crazy. So that's why you need to lock him up. He ain't going uncrazy.
Well, we did do a lot of criminal stuff, but we did civil stuff. So it was a lot of... we could do construction defects. We did industrial equipment damage, stuff like that. But mostly what we did was personal injury. And so we'd say... We'd make timelines of, Steve... was a hiker, a biker, a family man, and whatever, and then he got in this car accident, he got this brain injury, and this is everything that happened to him afterwards.
Or especially this accident at work.
Yeah, exactly.
And then he, saw a chiropractor 15 times, and he still can't hike or ride his bike properly.
Yeah, exactly. So we could show, what happened to somebody over the course of their injury. And that was a really cumbersome process, right? Like it was very heavily graphic design intensive. And huge stakes. And
sometimes
if we're in trial and a lawyer hears more evidence and decides they want to add more stuff to the timeline, all we could do is throw a sticky note on there, right? It just looked bad. And we also made timelines for mediation as well, like stuff that would happen before trial, for lawyers trying to get cases settled. And in all that process, that tedious work and that inability to adjust timelines on the fly, I thought, hey, let's let's make our own. I had some coders in there because we still had our website business.
Sure.
I said, let's see if we can make our own timeline, web-based timeline tool that we can just give to our lawyers. Our lawyers can
They
enter.
can plug in the information. It's
Yeah.
date driven.
Yeah, and then if they need to change things on the fly or whatever, it's not a big deal. It doesn't
Right.
require a
We'll
graphic
charge
designer.
them $149 a month.
Something
they
like
could use
that.
it. Whatever.
Yeah. So I mock this thing up with my coder. I bring it home to my wife, who's a lawyer. I say, what do you think of this? And she basically says, I think this is the future of your company. Like, she's like, this is amazing, you know? And so, yeah, we kind of make a decision. I was looking to find a scalable product anyway. I was getting really tired of crawling around courtrooms, moving televisions, monitors, projectors, screens. Like, I was just tired, right?
Yeah,
And
you're still boots on the ground doing that stuff. You haven't really quite moved into the proper owner seat.
I'm the owner,
yet.
but I have a lot of staff at this point.
Right.
I think at some point at Lawfather I had 15 to 20
But you're still
people.
crawling around
But I'm
courtrooms
still
and
leading
stuff?
it. You know, I'm still the main tech guy, and I was tired of it. And I wanted something bigger. By now I'm starting to learn about how to scale business.
Yeah.
That I don't have to be the guy doing everything.
Met a few more people with examples of that.
Exactly.
I saw that you were involved with Entrepreneurs Organization
And that
for
was
quite
it.
a while. Was that
That was it. That was
along these days?
I started there in their accelerator program.
Okay.
Which is for companies between $250,000 and $999,000.
Okay.
And I went through their 3-year accelerator program and did get my businesses up to $1 million, graduated, and I'm still proudly a member of EO. In
Cool.
fact, I just finished my presidency last year, so I ended up becoming president of this organization, which is really...
Is there the whole thing or of the
Colorado chapter?
The Colorado chapter. So that's
Yeah.
probably quite a few individual chapters, or are they smaller groups that how does that work?
So chapters are usually city driven, but ours is state driven because we don't have such a
You don't have a huge membership in Colorado.
Boulder members are part of Colorado. Fort Collins members are part of Colorado.
okay,
Denver,
okay.
Colorado Springs. So right now we still just have a Colorado chapter. However, we have members in different cities.
Gotcha.
In other states like California, they have the LA chapter, the Silicon
Sure,
Valley chapter,
yeah.
San Francisco. We just happen to be statewide. So at the time that I left as president, I think we were around 180 members.
Okay, so
So business owners with $1 million or more in annual revenue.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then do you have smaller groups that get together and stuff, or you just have like a
Yeah. So within
quarterly thing with 180 people?
No. So within that, we are broken into what are called forums.
Okay.
And so these are
Now I get it.
Yeah.
At Loco Think Tank, we call it a chapter.
Oh, gotcha.
Each little unit is
Gotcha.
a chapter,
Yeah.
and we don't have a forum, obviously. So your forums are our chapters.
Yeah.
And how many people are in a forum?
Like 7 to 9.
Okay.
Yep. And yeah, when I finished my presidency, I actually entered leadership in the U.S. West, which is our region. So now I serve as an expert to the region, and not so much at the local chapter, even though I'm still a member of the local chapter.
And I guess, can you, for a lot of people, they don't know much about Entrepreneurs Organization. If you're not an entrepreneur, you probably never heard of it.
Right.
And even if you are, you may not have.
Yeah.
Can you kind of give it's a peer advisory with some similarities to Loco Think Tank, but like volunteer leaders of forums from rotating kind of basis, and then there's, I guess, a whole statewide structure for all 180 people and stuff.
Yeah, for sure. So Entrepreneurs Organization it's different from other business organizations, which are generally like leads groups or networking groups, and that EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, EO is a learning-driven organization.
Okay.
Meant to teach lawyers how to enhance the value they get from their businesses or the value they create in their businesses.
Sure.
But
Sometimes both related.
Yeah, but rather than being strictly business focused, we look at the intersection of business, personal life, and family. And so we give equal attention to those. So we might have learning events around how to be a better father, right?
Sure.
Or how to plan for college. Then we'll also have, how to increase your cash flow or get a loan from the SBA, as well as personal stuff like how to deal with your demons or trauma or some of the stuff that I do now, right?
Yeah.
And so, we try and give equal attention to all three of those areas.
I didn't realize that. I thought it was really business focused.
No, it's family focused as much as it's personally focused, as much as it's business focused. Yeah.
we say around Loco, we say 2 parts business, 1 part personal, kind of just as a very simple, but you're
Yeah.
like a third in some respects.
Yeah, yeah. And then each person kind of creates their own experience, right? You don't have to
But it's still a business person's group,
exactly.
ultimately,
So
so hard to separate that.
right. It starts entrepreneurs organization.
Yeah.
So I always say the entrepreneur does come first. And you do have to have a business. You have to be the founder of a business or the co-founder of a business.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So, like, if you buy somebody's business, that doesn't count?
It can, but it requires a little more scrutiny.
Okay,
and there's
fair.
also an examination of your journey from when you bought it, right?
Fair.
So
if you bought it and you're in the process of wrecking it, sorry.
or if you bought it, it was very small and you grew it over the last few
Right.
years, right?
Then that indicated kind of a positive growth environment.
Yeah,
fair.
yeah.
Okay.
Because, like you said, it is a peer group, right?
Right.
And so we're looking for people who have similar or shared experiences in which
Right.
we can learn from.
Well,
one
if you got
another.
all the problems and none of the solutions, then it's hard to find value in that membership
Yeah.
for everybody else, for you.
For sure, for
So
sure.
okay, so at this transition point into this software company from kind of a services company, you also joined EO.
I joined EO before that.
Before
just
that
shortly,
even.
yeah,
Okay.
before I spun that out. I can't remember exactly what
Yeah,
year I
but
joined.
sometime before, but
Yeah, so I joined.
really started getting some perspective on.
Yeah,
Oh, I can hire people to do actual hard things and stuff like that.
So that was I had been trying a lot in business through trial and error, and what EO told me, showed me, and taught me were kind of hard and fast rules about like when do you hire, how do you what is how, I had never thought about cash flow and how cash flow allows you to do different things in your business. You know,
right.
I mean, I was just trying to I thought if I made $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year, like, oh man, I'm making it because I'm working for
paying the
myself.
rent. Yeah.
Exactly, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
how do you scale? How do you hire management? Just a lot of stuff.
Yeah, how do you grow from $500,000 to $2 million
Yeah.
and increase your net profit margin all along the way?
Exactly.
Whatever.
Yeah, so those were things that I was not familiar with that really got taught to me in EO, and then really allowed me to see my business in terms of numbers, to plan my business, which is something I'd never done before.
Yeah.
And to grow according to that plan. And almost as soon as I graduated from EO, I started another business, from EO Accelerator and into EO. I started another business called Queen Anne Pillow Company.
Okay, yeah.
And grew that from $0 to $1 million in 18 months. So if you look at Lawfather, it took me about 10 years
Wow.
to get to $1 million. And
Yeah,
then
yeah.
once I learned all these things I learned from EO, the next business, it took
That's
me
cool.
less than 2 years. So
Wow. And how did that concept come along? Why was there a pillow company in your future
because
at this point in time?
I had a terrible back problem.
Okay.
That eventually resulted in 2 surgeries, and the whole time before those surgeries, I was seeing these ads. Oh, this pillow will save your neck pain, blah blah blah, and I was like, is there a pillow out there that helps with back pain?
Yeah.
I couldn't find one, but what I learned is that, man, buying pillows is like a really interesting experience. Some are $4, some are $400.
Right.
You don't know what the difference between them is. Like,
Yeah.
I couldn't explain it. And this was, like 2012. It was 2011, 12. I mean, it was kind of the start of direct-to-consumer companies.
Yeah, fair.
And I had all this expertise in online marketing already because I had been doing pay-per-click advertising and SEO for lawyers.
Gotcha.
I saw that the online pillow purchasing experience wasn't awesome and was in its infancy.
Yep.
And I thought, man, if I could combine my marketing expertise with solving this problem of helping people pick the pillow that's right for them, maybe I could be successful. And so I launched Queen Anne Pillow really under the value proposition that I will teach you how to buy the best pillow for you if you buy it from me. And if you buy it from me and it doesn't work out, I will continue to replace that pillow until you get a model that works.
Fascinating.
And so even though people were like, you're crazy, right? Because
Yeah.
shipping a pillow costs $20.
I'm sure.
Right?
Yeah, that seems like a crazy business.
And so you go
proposition.
back and forth and back and forth. But I
If
had
somebody takes you up on the, we'll replace it if it doesn't work.
we'll keep replacing
But you
it.
had to kind of get good at getting them the right one
Yeah,
first?
yeah.
Like,
So
how did you do that?
We created
like
a
bunch of
matrix.
focus groups or something?
We created a matrix. I looked at
You and all your
sleep
friends.
studies. And, well, no, I had this academic background, so I'd look
Sure.
at sleep studies.
Okay.
I would go look at reviews of other pillows. I would try and understand what people were complaining about and what their expectations were. I thought if I could fill those expectations. I'd looked at side sleepers, back sleepers, snorers, tall people, short people, fat people, skinny people, and like just tried to come up with this matrix that let people, allergies. Do you want a cool pillow? Do you want a warm pillow? And finally created this matrix of, I don't know, like 10 or 12 variables, and you could kind of go like this and say, okay, this should be the right pillow for me.
Boop, 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 boop.
Yeah, exactly. And if I was wrong, or if the matrix was wrong, we would replace it.
And then people, I guess you had a margin on each pillow sold,
of course,
as well.
Yeah.
Then, so they could still buy the $400 pillow or the $40
Yeah,
pillow.
I mean, our pillows were expensive for sure. I think ours.
And did you make them?
We did. We made them in South Carolina.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah.
The U.S. supplier. How did you find somebody to make the pillows, and how did you? So you started researching all these pillows, matrix them, and then you kind of hit different target markets based on who was where, kind of, and did a spread of products.
Yeah, kind
of like that.
I mean,
you
not
didn't
that
steal their
fast.
designs
I
or
wouldn't,
whatever. But
I wouldn't say like that. I was not a pillow genius. I didn't know shit about pillows,
right.
right?
Like, how do you
Nothing.
get a product to sell in the
Right.
first place? It seems like that's a long journey.
All I knew was like I wanted better pillows for myself, and I wanted to understand this problem so I could sleep better.
All right.
And so I reached out to a number of pillow manufacturers, asking them if they would be willing to help me make some pillows for myself and test out different materials. And everybody except one company ignored me, and the company that answered me was in South Carolina, and they were not a consumer company. They were an industrial pillow company,
Yeah.
if you will. So they made pillow and bedding products for hospitals and hotels.
Sure.
And so I was no threat to them.
Right.
They were happy to screw around with me.
Right. You give it a little fun little
Yeah,
project.
I'd send them some ideas. They'd send me some samples. I'd dick with them, send them back. They'd sew it back, And I got these pillows I really liked. And I said, I think I might start a company.
And did you have a few $1,000s invested by now?
Sure.
And a bunch of
Yeah.
hours.
Yeah.
Dozens
I
and
mean,
dozens, if not hundreds.
Yeah, but it probably cost me a few $1,000.
But your back felt better after you found the right pillow.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so I was just largely using their materials,
Yeah.
right? Because they had down and feather,
Sure.
polyester. They had all these bins of things, and they just kind of
Memory
let me
foam
pick.
coming out about that time.
Yeah. And then just kind of let me pick what I wanted to do. And so then when I made the recipe, if you will, for what I thought were good pillows for me and good pillows that I wanted to sell, I just used their materials in my recipe. So where I might put 48 ounces of, I might have a 48-ounce pillow with 25% down, 75% whatever.
And according to this matrix, you've got these different kind of mixes.
Yeah.
And some are thicker and some are thinner, that kind of thing.
Some are softer, some are more sturdy.
Right.
I over time developed a line of probably 6 models and 3 SKUs in each model, so 18 different variants, right?
Okay.
So you've got king, queen, and standard,
Yep.
and then whatever the different fills were.
Yeah.
And at first I used their material, and then over time I started to source my own
And all direct
stuff.
to consumer
All
shipped.
direct to-
Your FedEx bill is big every month.
Yeah, and then we went to Amazon,
Okay.
and that really, then the company really took off.
Okay.
We were early to Amazon. We were, one of the early manufacturers, brand registered manufacturers there.
Gotcha.
And that was the real catalyst to our growth.
Okay.
And simplified our process.
And what was the growth of your team like during this time? Like,
So I largely
you had these guys in South Carolina making your pillows,
Yeah.
right? And you just
yeah, and they had probably
did they direct ship and stuff too?
They did. Yeah. So I would go out there every couple months. I would check in my product. I did have to import some stuff there. It would come up in a ship in Savannah, and then it would be trucked 35 miles to Beaufort. I was getting into things that like I never imagined I would,
Sure.
but I thought it was so cool.
Right.
I was learning so much. I know I had containers coming from China. I was badass, man. And I loved to go out there and check the
Well,
product
and you're in this
in.
community with EO besides, and they're all like encouraging you and cheering
course.
you on. You're like, dude, you
course.
got to get it straight from China. You
Of
can't be
course.
paying a distributor for that. You got a container worth.
Of course, yeah. So I learned a lot in that, where to source materials, how to create a supply chain, because we didn't have anything made in China, but there were some things we had to get from
Right.
China. Everybody has to get their fabric from China. We just don't have that here still,
makes sense.
unfortunately. But we could still cut and sew here. We can still fill
Yeah.
and sew it here. And we can do a packaging and inserts and all that. Yeah. So I would have boxes coming from one place, bags from the other, inserts from the other. This kind of fill from here. This coming from Canada. This coming from Europe, and it was all coming to the factory, and
Right,
then I would
right.
go there and check it in, and
Testing the different types and
yeah,
whatever.
making sure it wasn't damaged, make
Yeah.
sure it still felt good, and yeah, it was a lot
And
of
then
fun.
you're doing the marketing,
Doing-
getting reviews after your customers are happy.
Yeah, and
when
so
you do replace a pillow, making sure they
Yeah.
get the right automated email for that.
Yeah. So, going back to that idea of can you sell pillows to people who can't feel them, right? Like this was the pushback that I
Right.
got from everyone.
Right.
No one's going to buy a pillow online because they're not going to be able to touch it or hold it. And that's when I said, well, I'm going to make this incredible offer to them that if it's
Right.
not right, I'll continue to replace it. And I got that idea from Tony Hesh when he put out that book, what was it called? Something Happiness, about his journey to build Zappos. And he said everyone had said the same thing to him. And he said, that won't matter if we create the greatest customer experience in the world.
Yeah.
And that's what I applied to Queen Anne. And what I learned is rather than looking at those people who continue to eat up cost and profit and shipping as a bad thing, what I learned is when you made them happy, they became the biggest advocates of your company.
Yep.
They got online and they told everybody
Right.
about how amazing you were, how accommodating.
Yep.
And it turned into an advertising
Right.
strategy.
Right. Well, and picky people everywhere are like, holy shit,
Yeah.
this lady returned her pillow 5 times and they still made her happy.
Yeah.
And that could be me.
Yeah. And imagine if I hadn't been nice to that lady. She
Yeah.
would have taken the same veracity of her anger and disappointment
sure.
online as she did her happiness.
Do you know or remember like what percentage of your customers actually did ask for a different pillow?
Yeah. Like it was like 5 to 8%.
Yeah.
Which is about what I always promised.
And then
I
like
said,
90% of them probably were happy with the next one.
Yep. Yeah, they would just say it was a little soft. Or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
And when it came to down and feather, because our pillows range from $72 to up to $400.
Okay.
And when it came to down and feather, I mean, down is incredibly expensive material.
Yeah.
If you buy
And it's heavy too, shipping.
yeah. But if you buy feather pillows that are like $20 or whatever, you're just buying feather. And to be honest, you could be buying chicken feather. I'm not lying. But to buy 100% down, goose down, which is what we did,
Okay.
goose, is really expensive. So in some of those cases, we would just take the pillow back, send it back to the factory, have it opened up again, and either add
Take
or
a little
remove.
bit.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, that
because
makes
it was.
sense.
I mean, that was a huge. Our cost was massive,
Yeah.
and so it made more sense for us just to take the
Interesting.
pillow, pay
Well, and
for
you
the
got-
shipping.
Containers going back and forth all
Mm-hmm.
the time. Or was it all individual shipped, all these pillows?
Those direct to consumer ones, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we just say put it back in the box.
I
We'd
guess,
email them
yeah.
UPS return label. It would
Yep,
come back
yep.
to our factory. We'd adjust it, sew it back shut, and send it back to
Man,
them.
UPS loved you.
They did.
Consistent shipping.
Of course they did, yeah.
Well, I know you wanted to talk a fair bit about kind of the next adventure, but maybe does it make sense to go into kind of like the departure from the pillow business?
Yeah.
And then, meanwhile, is the software business like flourishing? Are you distracted along the way? Are you doing them both at the same time? What's going on
Yeah.
over there?
Yeah. So
Sorry, that's 2 questions.
no,
at
no.
once,
So
which is
Queen
hard.
Anne, I think, was started in 2011.
Okay.
A few years after that, my father-in-law retired, and he called me and he said, basically, I'm bored. And he said, do you have anything that I can work on with you?
Yeah, okay.
Well, the pillow company wasn't my priority at the time, so I said, well, I have this pillow company I've launched. I haven't given it as much attention as I'd like. So if you want to take it over, I'll tell you everything that you need to do.
Okay.
And then, you and I can
And was this pre-Amazon and stuff? So
this was
he-
pre-Amazon,
Okay.
right? So he agrees, and I'll just make a long story short. We start to have way more success than either of us really imagined. I think he was looking for something to do.
He was a
something
little
that might
easy,
pay him
little
a
light
couple,
work.
yeah, a couple $1,000 a month or whatever. But we had a good product and we had a good system, and it really took off. And so we ran that for 8 or 9 years together, and very successfully. We had a great partnership, and but COVID hit. And we had a month of like, oh shit, we just built this amazing company, and now no one's buying anything.
Right.
And then all of a sudden that
Then
changed.
the free money flows into the economy like crazy.
Well, everyone's at home now, and so
Right.
they start replacing their bedding, and they want to make
Right.
everything more comfortable.
Well, and plus they got $1,200 debit
Yeah,
cards
true,
and stuff like
true,
that.
True.
you know?
Yeah, so Queen Anne went from good growth to all of a sudden this kind of hockey stick growth.
Yeah.
And by this time he's now 8 years out of his retirement, and he's starting to think about really retiring, right? and our cash flow, we didn't have awesome cash flow because the more we sold, the more product we had to buy, the longer it sat on ships, and so it was just all of our money was constantly being reinvested.
Yeah, but your balance
and
sheet was blown
reinvested.
up.
Yeah, right. So it was kind of like, hey, we're not in agreement about what we want to do next.
Right.
The challenge is we're going to have to bring in another partner, a capital partner or something like that to continue to grow at this rate.
Right. And probably a new manager because
Yeah.
father-in-law doesn't want to work that much harder either.
Right, exactly. Which he was always honest about. So,
Sure.
and so we said maybe this is a good time to sell the company. And so we approached a broker, decided what we want, and got an offer for exactly what we asked for, like right off the bat. So I mean, it was a really awesome deal. And then in that, I thought, you know what? Okay, so this is going to give me some time to turn my attention back to Trialline, which was the software company that I had just gotten off the ground. It was a similar story. We launched that company January 1st, 2019. Got a ton of awards for legal tech and all this stuff.
Yep.
Everyone was like, "This is a cutting edge, kick ass, best of whatever thing."
Got some clients, but wasn't crushing it yet.
I wasn't crushing it. Had dumped a ton of my money into development. All of my money.
Well, back in those days, it was so much more expensive to do development.
It was
Even
so much.
A simple app was like $250,000.
Yes. So I'm getting close to that figure myself.
Right.
Know? And then COVID hits. And it was the same thing, right? It was like all that momentum, all that investment felt like it had just been just sucked out of the room and it was going to be lost forever. But similarly, as lawyers realize, okay, we're going to have to do a lot more of this online. We're going to need, and my product was SaaS based, so it was browser based. It's
and instead of you running around putting easels and freaking stands up with pictures,
you can't do that on a Zoom during a Zoom hearing or a Zoom mediation or a Zoom trial, right? And so Trialline started to become kind of a popular option for this new virtual legal practice, and so it started to grow again. And so after selling Queen Anne for a year, going back to work on Trialline for a year, I just knew, to be honest, that I was just tired.
Yeah.
I had been through a lot. I had been pedal to the metal with 3 companies for 8 years. And when I sat back and looked at the fact that I think it was my 15-year anniversary for Lawfather or something like that, it showed up on LinkedIn.
Yep.
Knowing that I had always wanted to be a musician, and a writer, and
still
I
can,
but I just felt like I was. It wasn't what I would have picked for myself or predicted for myself 15 years before that.
Sure.
And while I loved it, I loved building companies. I definitely loved selling companies.
Right.
But I just felt like I had an opportunity to sell Trialline as well. I had sold Queen Anne Pillow, and I could really make a fresh. Yeah, I could really make a fresh start for myself. And so I made the decision just to sell Trialline. That did not happen as easily as Queen Anne Pillow did.
Yep.
But when it did happen, it happened with a great company, a great guy.
That's still operating.
And so I sold that about, it'll be 2 years. It's 2 years this month.
Okay.
2 years in June.
And then you go into sabbatical mode?
Yeah.
And by the way, do you need to take up anything? You good?
No, I'm good.
All right, let's keep cruising.
I had non-competes with both of them.
Yep.
It made it a little difficult to figure out what I was going to do next. I had a little money in the bank, and I decided that, you know what, I'm going to go back to this work that I wanted to do that feels a little more important to me. And by that time, I had started talking about my drug addiction. I had developed a drug addiction over that period of time.
During this season?
Yeah.
Okay.
During that season of balls to the wall, 3 companies or whatever, because of my back problem, I had become addicted to opioids. And I didn't appreciate the level of my addiction until I started running out of pills more frequently, and then started buying pills from people, then started buying pills from the streets.
More than your doctor is willing to prescribe.
Definitely. Kind of thing. And then at some point had this like full-blown addiction.
Oh, wow.
That I was totally hiding from everybody. My family, my friends, my EO members, my forum mates, everybody. I was terribly embarrassed about it. I had come from a family of addicts. My dad had died from his addiction. My brothers had been in prison for their addictions. I always thought I was the good one, that I had escaped it, and I hadn't. And it was tough. And so I did get through that.
What did that do to you? More from a mental, emotional state.
Yeah.
Like, did it make you short or distracted, or what is the real
it-
life impacts? Because we all hear about opioid addiction,
Yeah,
but we might
yeah.
not know how to recognize it
I
even in
mean,
the
there,
people we love.
there's the physical addiction, and or
Sure.
I'm sorry, there's the physical consequences, and
Just
there's the
doing
mental
anything for it, yeah.
and then there's the mental consequences, right? And the mental consequences were this constant story in my head that I am a piece of shit, that I have fucked up, that I am a hypocrite.
What?
Yes, because I thought I had got away from all of that, right? Like I said, I come from this family of
Sure.
addicts. To all my friends and family, I was the success story, right?
Yeah.
To the people in EO, I was a great success
Sure.
story. And so I couldn't talk to anybody about it, right?
Right.
Because that would have totally damaged who I thought I was to everybody and put at risk this vision I had of myself as a hero who could be an example to people who could get out of their troubles.
Yeah.
And it was very
Yeah, escape
isolating.
poverty, escape the music industry if you had to. And was this your first brush with addiction, like
Yes,
in your music
absolutely.
career? And
No,
no booze, no cocaine, no whatever.
Never. No, because before that time, I was so scared of drugs and addiction because of my family.
Sure.
And so even though I was absolutely exposed to everything you can imagine,
Yeah, I'm sure.
outside of
You're in the music scene in
yeah.
Seattle and LA,
Yeah,
in
yeah,
the late
yeah.
90s and early
Yes,
2000s.
Yes. Outside of drinking, which I also was moderate about and would take breaks from just to make sure I was okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Anything past that was like a no-go zone for me.
Yeah.
I was very much like, no, my dad died.
Even in
from,
Colorado, with weeds getting legalized and stuff, you're not.
Dude, I do weed now.
Okay.
Okay. And it took me a long time to get comfortable with that.
Yeah.
And that only came because of my opioid addiction.
Kind of
I
an
still
alternative
have,
to that
yes.
in some ways.
I still have back pain. I still
Right.
struggle with back issues.
right.
And it has done
And how is that comparatively, like in your mental and physical health, comparing the two treatments, we'll call them?
Yeah, night and day. I mean, on the physical side of opioids, I mean, if your question is like, how can you maybe tell that somebody is
Maybe, yeah,
you
a
know,
little bit more. I was thinking more in the brain side, but also like how do people recognize when somebody's having a problem like that?
Yeah.
They look outwardly successful.
Yeah, I did have my brother worked for me, and although he didn't know the extent of my addiction, he had been an addict, and I think he knew I was on opioids, but he would cover for me a lot because, you have two things. One, when you're high, right, you can get sick, which is kind of fun. I mean, but you
What
also
do you mean you can get sick?
you can get
like you puke?
yeah
nauseous?
yeah. I mean, so
Okay.
here
You get high, like high,
Yeah.
high. I feel I think about opioids as
Yeah.
kind of like you get numb, but you actually get high, like a
Well,
cocaine
I guess
or a
if
heroin. I guess you wouldn't know.
for me, getting numb was the part that I loved. Right,
that's getting high.
Yeah, getting numb was the part, like because
Gotcha.
all of this trauma that I had in my childhood, then it gets exacerbated by the fact that I feel like a total fucking loser.
Right.
And so I just want to do more and more of these drugs because I want it to get quieter and quieter. I mean,
Yeah.
that was the addiction part.
And it starts with the pain in the back.
It starts with the
right?
pain, and then the
then
pain
it's-
goes away,
oh,
but at the
it
same
numbs
time,
my brain thoughts too.
all these voices go
Okay.
away, right? And so
Yeah.
when I took that first handful of pills, it was like, oh, wow, man,
So much quiet.
so much quieter. I mean, and I had never felt like that in my life.
Yeah.
I had just always had this constant.
I've really never taken any of them. Like even
Yeah.
I had hydrocodone or something like that for when I broke my leg a
Yeah.
little bit, but I've never really
Yeah,
experienced like the stronger stuff that we've
Yeah.
had in the last 20 years around.
yeah.
Maybe
I
probably
think
pass
I mean,
actually.
you could pass. You could pass. Yeah, for sure. I think it's different for different people.
Right.
There's plenty of people who have taken opioids and been fine.
Yeah.
It's like me and my brothers all ended up with addictions, and we all were addicted to different drugs
Yeah.
for different reasons, right? And my father and my uncle also. My dad was an alcoholic. My uncle's thing was crack. My brother Jay's thing was heroin. My thing was opioids. And my other brother Matt, his thing was meth, right?
Oh.
And to
Big variety there.
I
Give
know.
them quite a party
but
if you
to,
get everybody together.
but yeah, exactly. But to all of us, all those other things we didn't have any interest in. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like we
Yeah.
all had like our one thing. And so
Yeah,
for me,
fascinating.
opioids was my one thing. I think we were all trying to solve
Yeah.
the same problem. We'd all come from these terrible circumstances. We had these
Yeah.
terrible thoughts going on, or chronic berating in our head,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
chronic questions about our value and worth in the world.
Yeah, yeah.
And we each had found something, either on purpose or accidentally, that quieted it. And mine was a total accident.
Yeah.
You know, at the point that I started taking opioids, I was not thinking about my mental health.
Right. You're like, my back hurts. Yeah.
Yeah. But, you know, so on the mental side, I talked about
Oh, so did you come clean, like publicly and stuff, in
yeah,
this
so
time
that
after the
yes,
sales and
yes, yeah,
stuff,
yeah.
or
So
what was
this
that
is the
like?
whole point of that story. I'm sorry.
No, it's good. We'd
That
like to chase squirrels around here.
the point of that was saying, when you said, what did you end up doing after you sold the companies? Well, a few years before that, I had come clean
Okay.
just in my entrepreneurship community about my addiction.
Wow.
And the reason I did that was because I realized that if I could have been as successful as I was, and I could have been perceived as great as I was, but I was lying and struggling
Yeah,
with
and
this
holding yourself
addiction,
back. Yep.
that there were probably other people in my community too who were in the same place. And so I wanted to be the person to raise his hand and say, look, I am an addict. I've been a drug addict. I did it for a number of different reasons, but I suspect that there's some people out here who are going through the same thing. And I want to be the person you can come to if you're struggling. And I want to be that first step in getting better, because I've been sick and I've been better, and better's better.
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
Yeah, yeah.
And so I gave a talk, a private talk. Man, it was scary.
Yeah.
And I
bet.
remember I went to my wife too beforehand, and I said, "Look,
She knows about this
Yeah,
the
oh,
whole
yeah.
time, or
well, she
later?
knew longer than she knew longer than I thought she did.
Sure.
And when I finally came clean, she definitely
It's
knew.
about time you came
Yeah,
clean.
yeah. But I said, "Look, this is what I feel called to do right now." Sorry. I want to help, you know, and I said, if I do this, I'm going to go public, and that could be embarrassing. It was a conversation I'd had
She's
with
like
my
a lawyer
kids
in town
too.
still
Yeah,
and stuff,
yeah,
right?
mhm.
Yeah. How old are your kids
16 and 18
now? Or
now,
then?
yeah. And so,
So they're old enough to know what's going on when Dad.
they
does
are
this.
now. Maybe 8 years ago, or it was probably closer to 9 or 10
Okay,
years ago.
yeah.
It was a little harder to explain,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it has been an open secret since then. So they definitely know now.
Right, right.
But I said, I want to go public with this. I want to help. And we talked about it, and she said, yeah, you should do it. If that's what you want to do, you should do it. And that first talk was about just this private event, right? With about 100,
Right.
100 people. And then I got asked to do this more public event with 500 people.
And
so I
you make
was
it just
going,
as good as that last one?
Here we go again. Are you
Right.
cool with this? This might end up on the internet,
Right.
And at that event, I had a line of people next to the stage as I was coming off, crying,
Well,
hugging
all
me,
saying you talked right to where I
thanking me.
am right now.
Yeah. And
So you help people
yeah. And at that moment,
for reals.
yeah, I was like, man, I can fix this, and I can give it a reason. I can give everything I went through a reason, and I can help people who are going through the same thing. I can make a difference.
Yeah.
And very quickly, that almost became the most important thing in my life. And so that led into the decisions also
Mix
to sell
make
the
some
companies,
changes
make
and-
some changes, and to live doing more of this personal work and this deep work in the service of not just entrepreneurs, but anyone who might hear that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I've lost a lot of people because of addiction, and maybe I can be that one intervention that saves somebody.
Even just one
Yeah.
is enough, but
Yeah.
it sounds like you've already made a lot of impacts.
I
And
hope so.
so. Talk to me about where the writing and the researching comes into this.
Yeah.
You have a book now or coming?
I'm working on 2 books.
Okay.
Yeah. So the first thing that I did was I spent some time asking myself, after I got through that recovery, what did I do to recover? What did I need to do to recover? And how could I kind of codify that into a system that I could share with other people, right? Because a lot of it is like the pain, the negative self-talk, all these
Yeah.
horrible thoughts that we have about ourselves. And I did get through that, but I wasn't sure I could really articulate it. I knew I did a lot of work. I had gone to therapy. I had done a lot of self-study. I had returned to sociology for some ideas. And I said, oh, I think I understand. I think I understand what I was able to do to get past the pain and the voices that led to that addiction. And so I codified that into a 5-step system that I call the time traveler method. And it's basically to help people re-examine their past, look at their trauma, their chronic trauma, and reframe it in a way that allows them to live a future all their own, right? To start to dictate.
To blank slate it a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. But just to change it and give themselves some agency as they move forward. Just saying you don't have to live under these same patterns and beliefs that you did before. You can be free from these things.
Yeah, yeah.
And this is how I did it. And so I started being asked to speak to other EO chapters about that journey. And I started to put that work together in a book. And so, yeah, basically a 5-step program or process that I think...
Kick that thing that's keeping you back.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Whatever that thing is.
Yeah.
Even. Does it have to be addiction, or is it other things
No,
too?
no. It's not just addiction.
People self-sabotage themselves with other various tools.
With other habits, with other excuses.
Self-talk, all that, right?
Yeah, exactly. The consequences of trauma, of childhood
So do you
trauma.
have a title for that book yet?
Yeah.
Is it coming?
It's called How to Be a Good Time Traveler.
Okay. I like it.
And it's break free from past trauma to create a future that's all your own.
I dig it.
And so I go through a little bit of my own biography.
Sure.
Or I guess autobiography if I'm writing it.
Yeah,
a little bit of my own memoir and my story.
Yeah.
And then kind of the crux of it is this addiction that I had one night where I decided I was going to go out and buy heroin.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Or because you couldn't find pills.
Because I couldn't find pills.
You're like, well, I guess the only next thing is heroin.
Yeah, and my brother, my brother's deceased now, but he had heroin, and so I was going to reach out to him.
Because he was a heroin addict?
He had been, his thing was actually meth, but he would do heroin too.
In a pinch.
And so I had this brilliant idea that I was going to ask him to shoot me up because I was fucking dying from the withdrawal. You know, you talk about the physical stuff.
And what, like... puking and
shitting.
Yeah.
And you can't sleep. And literally, I don't know
shit.
if you've seen Train Spotting, but this idea that you think bugs are crawling all over you and you just like
Just a miserable
sweat
time.
and then hot and then cold. And it's terrible. Your skin's yellow. And it's just, and your liver's failing. This is one thing I hadn't quite talked about, but I remember going to these health fairs and stuff because my friend wanted to go, my friend Spencer, if you're listening, and I would get the results back from my blood test and they'd say, do you take a lot of Tylenol? Your liver is like really screwed up. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. But of course, all Percocet, Vicodin is all like cut with Tylenol, right?
Oh.
So I was killing myself, literally.
Oh, because you're getting whatever you get your hands on, street drugs,
and just
whatever.
Poisoning myself.
If you could just get straight oxy and find a crooked doctor or two, you'd have been in better shape.
Right. But you're just buying whatever has it in there, and if
you're lucky it isn't today. You'd have killed yourself with fentanyl.
Well, that's true. No,
honestly, doing that much street drug, getting it wherever you would, you'd have killed yourself accidentally by now.
Oh yeah, for sure, no, without a doubt. I believe it. And fentanyl's so much cheaper.
Right.
It is.
Totally.
I'd be dead. I would absolutely be dead.
How terrifying.
And my opioid hunger still exists.
Does it?
Meaning, I had...
How did you recover? Like, can we get into that a little bit? Or do I have to buy the book for that? Or like...
I did a very dangerous thing and just quit cold turkey.
Okay.
That night that I was going to ask my brother for heroin, I don't know what happened. I can't really tell you, but I had a moment of clarity, which was basically what you just said. You do that, you die. You may not die tonight, but you will die. And I was in my son's room when I was doing that. Well, the other thing I was doing that night was chugging a bottle of wine. My next plan was, okay, just get drunk so you pass out.
Right.
Like literally, like get so drunk you get sick and pass out so that you can at least stop feeling like you're going to fucking die.
Right.
I was in my youngest son's room. He was in his room with his older brother. They were younger kids. They slept together most of the night. And it's just like 2 a.m. and I'm just like, I don't know what else to do. And I just start looking around that room, and I'm like, shit, dude, you do this, you die. They lose you, and you become the one thing you despise the most, which is a father who put his addiction before his family.
Yeah.
Which is what my father did, and my father died at 38 from it.
Wow.
And I don't know. I went back into my wife's room. I woke her up, and I just said, I'm about to do heroin, and not you got to stop me, but somebody needs to know.
Yeah.
And from there, the secret was out.
It was like, lock me in a room.
Yeah.
I'm going to
cold
turkey this shit.
Basically what I did.
Oh, damn.
And it was not like 2 nights. This was like
yeah.
months.
Months?
Oh, yes. Oh yes.
Wow.
It was terrible. The thing is that
Like you
there's
didn't take any other opioids
no, no.
but you were in rough shape for
Yeah.
weeks and
Oh,
weeks.
months. It was like 6 months before I think I felt normal. The thing with the opioid addiction that I don't think people understand is it starts off as a fun thing, then it feels good, then it quiets the demons, and then your body needs it.
Right.
And so pretty quickly, I was taking so much opioids and so much Tylenol, not because I now wanted to get high. It was
Right.
because I didn't want to get sick.
Right.
Because getting sick was terrible. So most of the last half of my addiction was not lived being high. It was lived being sick,
Right.
but a different kind of sick than
Wow.
it was you were sick because you're taking so much, but at least you're not in withdrawal, because
Right.
the withdrawal you feel like you want
Wow.
to die. Like you'll do anything. Like you'll kill yourself, you'll do heroin, you'll fucking rob a bank, like you will do anything.
And do you have energy when you're in this kind of space, like to run these companies? I mean, most of these ideas popped off before you really got deep in your addiction. It sounds like
for sure,
So,
for sure. Yeah. I mean, when I said I had a brother that would cover for me, I would get sick. Because I didn't have enough drugs. I would be under my desk in my office with the door shut, puking in a
Sweating,
garbage
puking.
can.
Oh, God.
My brother would come in. He'd tell everyone I'd have the flu. He'd take me home, put me to bed. Like I said, skin's nasty. My liver's not working right. And all I'm thinking about scoring my next thing of pills is just I don't want to be sick, not like I want to be high.
Right.
The fun part of it
It's been
goes
years
away.
since there was
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah. So when I went
Ugh.
to quit, I knew what I was in store.
It's probably
for.
that way for those folks like the Matthew McConaughey's and even the Prince
Yeah.
and stuff like that. Like they haven't had any fun actually with their drug use in years.
No.
But Snoop still likes
Yeah.
to light up a joint and seems like he has fun, and so does Willie Nelson.
Well,
it's a different kind of drug,
It
obviously.
is because like I said, I didn't say I switched to marijuana, but a little while later I started taking marijuana to help with my back pain, and I did that at night to go to bed. But
Yeah.
if I went out of town and I didn't have marijuana, I didn't think about it once.
Right.
When I was hooked on opioids, I could not go.
You couldn't get on the airplane to leave without it figured out.
Dude, I had to count it all. Like I remember going on family vacations. I'm going on cruises with my family and knowing I was going to run out halfway through and desperately searching all of the countries and islands we were going to land on to see if I could find anything, codeine pills or Tylenol 3 or anything to get me through what I knew was about to be a fucking terrible week of withdrawal.
Right. And if you're with your family, with your kids,
Yeah.
they're like, why is daddy
in the
sweating?
room? Yeah. Or just drinking.
Right.
Just drinking as much as I could to pass out.
Suppress the symptoms down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Damn, dude.
Yeah.
What an intense story.
Yeah.
I want to take a short break.
Sure.
Because I need a potty break.
Yeah.
And then I want to get back to this kind of what you're going to do from here a little bit.
For sure.
As well as time machine, Loco Experience,
Yeah,
advice. We got a bunch of stuff to cover.
Hi, this is Clint Jasperson, Managing Partner at Purpose Driven Wealth. We believe financial clarity leads to a life of contentment and purpose. Our mission is to guide clients through the complexities of wealth management, retirement planning, and legacy using a values-driven, stewardship-based approach focused on provision, contentment, and enjoyment. With more than a century of expertise through Thrivent, we offer tailored strategies to help individuals and families achieve their goals and embrace generosity. Whether you're navigating a life or business transition or planning for the future, we're here to partner with you every step of the way. To learn more about Purpose Driven Wealth, call 970-330-7411.
Light, small,
Just a little bit.
lots of ice cubes.
A little nip.
A little nip, yeah. Well, that was like I was just reflecting how interesting that's going to be to listen back to that portion of the journey in particular, and just how much I want to just compliment your courage.
Yeah.
Well, I guess you didn't really have a choice. You were going to be dead, or you
Yeah.
were going to seek help and strength. And was there a faith component at all in your working in your life? Do you have that
Later.
now? Not yet.
I mean,
not then.
I mean, there was. So when I was a kid, my mom dropped us off at church.
Okay.
Like when I was like 5 or something.
Okay.
I remember my mom saying this, or maybe she reiterated it later, but she basically was like, I don't want to deny you guys church or religion.
The opportunity to be a part
Right.
of it.
I'm not going to go.
Not for me.
Right. But if you like it, stay. Right.
Yeah.
And my brothers went home and I stayed. And so I ended up being involved in church largely by
Confirmed and
myself.
youth group and different things.
Oh, all that stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
Summer church camp, youth group, all of it. But by myself, my family was never involved. I had the support of other families.
Sure.
And in fact, when I moved to Denver, that story I was telling you about, I worked for a church in Seattle part-time as their office and business manager, and I
Okay.
applied to a church in Denver to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And I lived in a church in the basement of that church that I worked at while I had valet ads.
Interesting.
And I was a member of that church. That church was a much more liberal church than some of the more evangelical churches
Sure.
that I had been exposed to, and I was a full-on member. I had what I
Fully
thought.
involved,
Yeah, I definitely considered myself a Christian and followed the Advent calendar and
Yeah. Okay.
Ash Wednesday and Good Friday, and I was at church every Sunday and actually became a Christian education coordinator too, helping with the Sunday school stuff. And then I just kind of had a bad experience.
Okay. Well, you almost said you considered yourself a Christian back then, but you don't think you actually knew the news yet or something?
I always said I was a reluctant son of God.
Okay.
Okay. So while I believe in God now and believed in God then, I often relied on God to fix things in my life. And when God did not fix things in my life, I became very very disappointed in God and would ask myself, well, what the fuck do I need you for? Right. And so
If you're not going to help me, then I guess I'll just do it my damn self.
That's right. And for a while there, I kind of tricked myself because I always felt like at the point that I left the church and decided to leave organized religion is when my career really took off. I started having a lot of success in entrepreneurship. And I remember saying to some people, see, when I stopped relying on God for my success and I started relying on myself, look what happened. And to me, that was evidence that, I did have a little period of atheism there where I said, this is evidence that there is no God, or if there is one, he has no interest in whether I do good or not. So I got no interest in him. But that definitely has changed over the last, 8 years for sure. And then I've done some deep work with psychedelics as part of my therapy.
Interesting.
And I have the best relationship with God I've ever had. Awesome. And a really deep, meaningful relationship with God, and not one that I'm scared to share or talk about. And that does not mean that I think Jesus is coming back on a horse with a flaming sword and going to cut off all the heads of people who thought like I did when
Some
I was
things
younger.
aren't quite so literal.
Right, exactly.
But you do believe in Jesus still? Do you consider yourself a Christian?
Yeah, I say Christianity is my tradition, so that is my practice to God is Christianity.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean that I believe that's the only way.
Fair.
Yeah.
I like to say it feels to me like every lens upon who God is a blurry one, and Jesus and the Christians in general seem to have the most clearest one.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's kind of my practice as well. But I'm not God, so I'm not the judge of whether somebody that's an amazing Hindu or a Buddhist or Islam doesn't also. It says it kind of clear, but that's what you would say if you were trying to get everybody to join your club. So I don't know.
Exactly. I think there are many routes to God, but I do think a practice is important, and I think
In a community.
Yeah, and I think that religions are our practice. And, I'm also a libertarian. So as long as your religion doesn't infringe on my religion, or your religion doesn't require you to cut my head off, or mine doesn't require to cut your head off, then, I'm kind of Will Ferrell in a semi-pro. Hey, everybody love everybody.
Have you, would you care to talk about the psychedelics and how that influenced your journey? I've heard a lot of things about that, and I know Denver is decriminalized now.
Yeah.
I don't know if you recognize it, but that's a giant mushroom right there.
Oh, yes, it is. Yes, it
My
is.
neighbor gave me that a few weeks ago, so
No.
I didn't offer before now, but it's probably late.
I
driving home in a funny way.
That's true. I'd love to, because I talk about my businesses all the time, and this part I don't get a lot of chance to speak about. So, of course,
So I guess set the stage a little bit for us. Like you've been clean for months and months by this point, right?
Yeah.
But you mentioned already earlier that you still have this draw.
Yeah.
Like if I had a oxy right now, and
I
put it
would-
right there, you'd be like, well, I could probably just eat that, just that one.
I wouldn't, but I know that I want it.
Right.
Right. And as an example, I got meningitis.
Okay.
5 or 6 years ago.
Okay.
I was hospitalized. I was in the hospital for like a week.
This is like a bacterial infection,
Yeah,
right?
of your
Right.
spine and your
oh,
brain.
Oh, right.
Yeah, it's really bad.
Right. Okay.
So at
Like,
any rate,
kills a lot of people.
yeah, it can kill people. Yeah, for sure. So I was in the hospital. I didn't have the mental wherewithal to say what I needed or I didn't, but I was in a lot of pain. A nurse came in and gave me an IV of obviously an opioid. She didn't know, right?
Sure.
I didn't make any warning or anything like that. And as soon as that hit my body, I wanted more.
Right.
And I knew exactly.
You're like, "Could I get a button?"
And I knew exactly what it was.
Yep.
And so I said to her, I don't know if I told her that I had been an addict, but I said, I won't have any more opioids, please. And I think she understood what I was talking about. But in that moment, I knew, like, when they say you're an addict, you're an addict.
Yeah.
It doesn't
That's
go
not a
away.
story that
Yeah.
your lifetime.
You have this hunger, right?
Yeah.
And so I still today have this opioid hunger, right? This instant instinct inside me when things are stressful or uncomfortable to reach for an invisible bottle that's not there. You know.
yeah. And hallucinogens help with that?
No.
No. Okay.
This was more about understanding how I got into a position
Gotcha.
as successful as I was.
It's more about exploring that
Right,
trauma
right.
and what that was,
What-
how it
right.
was.
Why do I have this inside me that needs to be shut down? Opioids happen to be the thing that did it.
Yeah.
But why do I live with
So
such?
exploring that question
Yeah.
is where the psychedelics helped more.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
And you do that guided or self-guided or
Sometimes self-guided, sometimes guided. I mean, I've done the
lay
whole
on your back and look
range.
at the stars for a
Yeah.
few hours
I
can
just
do wonders
think,
for a brain.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've done the whole gamut. Concluding with ayahuasca. So,
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And was that the
That was a capstone. Yeah.
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 Was
That's
it-
graduation for sure.
Was it as gross as people say?
Absolutely.
Like, you puked and all that,
I mean,
whatever.
there's people shitting. There's people puking. Right? I mostly dry heaved, but I mean that first round, you do it in rounds. I mean that first round, I was like, this is poison. You guys can call this plant medicine. You can be as fucking hippy dippy as
And were you with
want.
people that you knew?
Oh yeah, I was with a big group of people.
Oh,
We
really?
had a shaman. We had
Oh,
a
dang.
helper. I mean, I was in the most safest. It was a wonderful experience, and I did it the way that I think it needs to be done, and that's
yeah.
with a community of people that you know and trust, and also with a group of people who are in service to you, right? A
That
shaman
aren't
and
getting
they're-
all fucked up.
They're not getting fucked up. They're absolutely not getting fucked up. They are listening for opportunities to help and heal,
Yeah, yeah.
right? And so it was amazing. But as a young rock star, I mean, I did dabble in a few things. I never did coke or anything like that, but I had done LSD.
Yeah.
I had had some mushrooms. I had never had a full on mushroom experience, but I had some mushroom tea back then, and so I knew. I had done hallucinogens, and I knew
Yeah.
what it felt like to hallucinate and stuff, and so
And contrast that with ayahuasca.
I often say, you do acid or mushrooms, and it's fun. You can go skipping around a park with your friends and have a good time. You do ayahuasca, you just lay there in a sleeping bag, like, what the fuck, like
What the total?
yeah, and you close your eyes and you just go into this internal world where the external disappears completely, right? I mean, I blasted off into space and time, and
Right.
it was
The
fantastic.
separation is
But
complete.
yes, but you're not there. You're just a shell.
It's not a party drug.
No, it is not a party drug. If anyone's like, "Hey, I got some ayahuasca," if anyone's interested, no,
Maybe, but we're gonna plan it.
because I'm not gonna shit my pants and puke in a bucket and be like, "Hey, this is fucking great. Let's meet some girls.
Let's go play
Yeah,
pool.
exactly. No,
Concert. Yeah.
no. But yeah, I I did mushrooms in a therapeutic sense,
Yeah,
ketamine in a therapeutic sense, ayahuasca definitely in a therapeutic
What's that
sense.
new one? I guess it's ketamine that like
Yeah.
Texas is getting it close to approving like a therapeutic ketamine dose, especially for military type
Yeah.
PTSD stuff.
Yeah, Molly is another one that I've
Well,
done.
and
Or
Rick Perry,
MDMA.
former Texas, maybe it's that. It's MDMA.
Yeah.
Former Texas Governor Rick Perry is
Yeah.
a big advocate for that.
So ketamine is legal already, and you can go.
I think it's MDMA.
So MDMA is the one that still is like a research drug.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And they do a lot of that in Colorado too. There's a group in Boulder that does a lot.
So
of
is that part of your future research stuff too? Not to
No,
shift
I don't
channels?
have.
Not-
I don't have
no-
any
no
interest,
aspirations
no.
going there. That's just personal
There-
curiosity
yeah.
and therapy, basically.
There are plenty of people doing that. I'm happy to share my experiences, which have all been positive, in the hopes that it can be incorporated as a treatment. Because, it's often what I say, and I say this to my kids too. I
Yeah.
mean, they know this too. I've gotten the very same kind of insight and benefit from meditation, from being sober and sitting with myself and
Yeah.
focusing on something. But drugs do an amazing job of creating a shortcut to that, right?
Right.
And so it's not that it's absolutely necessary. In fact, breath work is another
I've heard
thing
that. Yeah, you can get almost a psychedelic state just from breath work.
Yeah, but it definitely is a shortcut. It speeds up the process.
Yeah.
And so at that time in my life, for those years in my life, I felt like I was in an emergency,
Yeah.
and that I was willing to do that to kind of speed up that process.
And so have you allowed yourself to feel like a successful person now after exiting
Yes.
these couple of businesses the last couple of years and
Yes.
stuff?
But I define success much differently than I did before. And I do not define it by my money, my sales,
It's not
my
your balance
businesses,
sheet.
or my stature. No, it's about time with my kids, the how I interrupted generations of family trauma to create something good in them, and to be able to see that it will continue to be good. Most importantly, that I can be a father who can be there for them when I didn't have a father, my father didn't have a father, right? There were always these great generational interruptions to just love, peace, and kindness.
Yeah.
And I was able to create that in my family, even through my struggles, thank God. And so I define success like that. And somebody asked me, I was giving a talk to EO San Antonio, and I was talking about this, my ayahuasca experience, and coming out of that, knowing what the meaning and purpose of my life was, and finding out that it had nothing to do with business, and just being so happy and content with that. And this woman asked me, she said, "Is it hard to get back into business after that?" And I said, honestly, yeah, it is. My whole world, my whole perspective changed after going through not just ayahuasca, but all of those processes.
Yeah, I'm sure.
About what's
A
important
lot of stripping down.
and what matters. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so this idea of just going to make money and using the resources of the earth just for the sake of making money is just, it's not something I can do or tolerate anymore. Again, it's like my vegetarianism. I don't give a shit what you do. I'm not
Yeah.
going out
Are you
there.
a vegetarian?
Yeah.
Damn, you're a strong looking dude for
Yeah.
a vegetarian.
A lot of shakes, man. A lot of shakes. A lot of shakes.
How long has that been?
Like 12, 13 years.
Damn. Interesting.
Long time. But
Yeah, I would self medicate with opioids too if I didn't have any meat in my diet. I don't know. I'm just saying.
But yeah, I mean, the point of that is like it is harder for me to get motivated to do business things, and I feel more called to this work of being a helper and in service to people.
Yeah.
And so I have been distracted by some things. I've gotten antsy about money. I haven't worked in a few years, and
Yeah.
I got a lot more going out than coming in. And sometimes I feel like that is enough to change my direction. But at the end of the day, I go back into prayer, my relationship with God, and I just try and reconfirm that I am in the right place, doing the right thing for me now, and doing the right thing for the people I care about. And that just kind of keeps me on the path.
Are you thinking about going back for that PhD now?
No,
Not at all.
I did look at it.
It feels like it might equip you in different ways than you realize.
Perhaps.
To me.
Yeah.
Like it might not be on the same track that you thought you were going to study, but I don't know. I wonder about it.
I'm not ruling it out.
I would like to jump us into the time machine.
Let's do it.
One of the things I like to say is at Loco Think Tank, we have a just-in-time machine.
Okay.
Like for getting a flyer out or doing this or that. It's like always just in time. Not always, but too often. But anyway, we'll jump in the not just-in-time machine.
Sure.
So let's go back to like those like earliest memory years 4 or 5 years old. You were in California then?
Yeah. Until I was 5. I think my mom moved us to Washington when I was 5. Yeah.
Can you remember California a little bit for me? And what was the circumstances of your family?
Yeah, I remember a couple things. I burned my house down when I was 2.5 years old.
Shit.
I definitely remember that.
Like with matches or something?
with a lighter. My mom was a smoker. I grabbed a lighter. She smoked in the house, as
Yeah.
everybody did. I'm not
Right.
bashing her.
My mom too.
I grabbed her lighter, went into my bedroom, took all my blankets, rolled them up, put them under my bed, and then lit them on fire.
Oh, damn.
I went back out to my mom. I said, "Mommy, come see my light." I was all proud of myself. And my mommy came in my bedroom and saw that it was on fire.
Oh, right. And where's the fire extinguisher? Oh, shit. I don't remember.
Now, my mom at this point is 18 years old.
Oh, damn.
She has my brother Matt, who is 1 year old, and she has my little brother Jeremiah, who had just come out of ICU. He was born way earlier. I think.
damn.
And he's months old, if that.
Your mom is 18 with her
18.
third kid.
Third kid.
And you're what?
And I've
You're
just
4?
I'm 2.5.
Oh, you're 2.5.
And I've just lit the house on fire.
Oh, damn. She's got like Irish triplets
Yeah.
as an 18-year-old.
Yeah. She got pregnant with me when she
Does
was
she not
15.
know how babies
No, I
happen,
think she
really?
knows exactly how babies happen. But anyway, she got pregnant with me when she was 15.
Dang.
She had me when she was 16.
And
And,
what were
then
the-
my brother at 17.
Like, she obviously didn't have a career or a job or
No,
anything. And who
nothing.
was your dad?
My dad
Or
was...
who is your dad, I guess? Or you said your dad was
He's
gone
dead,
now.
but yeah. My dad, this is a short version of the story. My dad was a very attractive, handsome, tattooed guitar player. Okay.
The beer goggles, the guitar goggles were
Yeah.
effective on your mom,
His
who was a hottie 15-year-old.
15-year-old who was looking for a way.
How old was your dad?
He was 17.
Oh, that's all.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, the short version is my mom's mom, my grandma Eileen, had schizophrenia. Okay, but it was undiagnosed. And so my mom was in a house full of chaos, mostly because my grandma was convinced that the school was calling, that the kids were doing all of these terrible things. And my mom and her brothers and sisters were constantly getting in trouble for shit that wasn't real. It was very confusing and stressful.
My mom's mom actually was very light in that.
Oh, really?
Paranoia, schizophrenia
Yeah.
kind of stuff.
Yeah,
And
this-
it was just grandma being weird.
Yeah,
You
no,
know?
this was full blown. Like
Yeah,
my
yeah.
mom would come home and my grandpa would sit her down and yell at all the kids because my grandma would say the school had called and caught my mom for smoking. And my mom, just like crazy shit.
Damn.
And so my mom gets this bright idea. I'm going to get out of this chaos. The way I'm going to do that is by getting pregnant, because if I get pregnant, my parents will make me get married, because my grandma was a hardcore Methodist. And
Gotcha.
in that time, nobody got pregnant and didn't get married. So my mom
Yeah.
found my dad,
Interesting.
seemed good enough,
Yeah.
got knocked up at 15,
Right.
and did get married at 16 before I was born, and moved
Just
out.
before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And moved out. So and from now, my dad was already a drug addict. He had gotten polio as a baby.
Oh, damn.
He had a very small leg that he had many surgeries and treatments on, and so as a little kid, he was addicted to
But it was still
painkillers.
charismatic and
Still
charming.
Well,
and
yeah, that was
attractive.
his defense mechanism to
Right.
this kind of crippling.
Yeah, yeah.
This leg that he had was to ride motorcycles, play guitar, and sing in a band. And my mom ate it up.
I think I got so funny and charming because I was like the smallest kid in every class.
Yeah.
Like I was 4'11" at the end of my 7th grade year, or in my 6th grade year for that matter, and then 5'1" at the end of my 10th grade year.
Wow.
And so I was just always kind of the class clown and
Yeah.
charismatic and kissing butt with the right
Yeah.
people and whatever. And then I got tall and handsome, and
Yeah.
I didn't need all those skills.
Then you had
but
the best combination.
right now I'm charismatic,
Tall,
and
handsome, funny.
beautiful. Yeah,
Hey, you and I,
exactly.
two pieces of
Yeah. So anyway, continue, please. But it's an interesting thing to reflect
Yeah.
upon, right?
Yeah.
So,
they
you're in this crazy situation,
yeah.
right?
And now
Like,
my mom and dad are in
and does he have a job and stuff?
fuck if I know. I mean,
Right.
they're in love like Sid and Nancy were in love. Like it's like fucking violence, and like my
Right.
my memories are my dad punching holes in doors and my parents screaming and my mom always
Right.
leaving.
and
us-
how did you choose Seattle to move to?
well, she didn't choose Seattle. She moved to this little town in eastern Washington called Steptoe, which had a population of 14 people.
Oh, shit.
I mean, so we went from Los Angeles
Yeah.
to a town that had 14 people and a truck stop called the Wheel Inn.
And how far was it from the next town?
Oh,
wait.
30 miles.
Right.
I mean, from the next big town,
Damn.
an hour and a half. I mean, it's the middle
Dude.
of nowhere. The middle of nowhere.
That's worse than North Dakota, where I grew
Yeah.
up.
And my mom moved there because her sister had moved to that area a year or two previous to that to go to college.
Okay.
And so my
That was like her one piece of support, kind of almost, or
well, her other brother, Michael, my uncle Mike, had bought my Aunt Patty this little itty bitty house in that town because it was like, I think he bought it for like $7,000.
right,
So that she could have a place to live while she went to college in the town that was an hour away.
right.
But she ended up marrying a guy, having kids.
This house is just sitting there.
And it's just sitting there. My mom decides she's like a thief in the night. She'd be arrested if she did this today. She kidnaps us from California, doesn't tell anybody where she's going except for my uncle and my grandparents. Doesn't tell anyone in my dad's family. Certainly doesn't tell my dad because she's just tired of living in this chaos and this violence.
Yeah.
And so she thinks at the time this is the best bet.
Although if she's been a subject to a domestic violence and stuff, I'll defend her right to
No,
grab you guys and
absolutely,
get you the hell out of there
absolutely,
any day.
absolutely. This is kind of part of what I was talking about before about being able to go back in time. When I look at it as a young man, to me, I'm like, why did you take us away from our family? I never got to see it was a very negative, bad thing. But when you go think about what now my mom was 20 when she did this. Because I remember when my mom turned 21, because that little truck stop in that town she worked at. And I remember her saying, oh man, when I turn 21, I'll finally be able to cocktail waitress. I can go to the bar and I can make more money in tips. I remember that. Who remembers their mom turning 21? Anyway, but
not very many people.
But as an older person, I can say, what would I do?
Yeah.
like I want to protect my kids.
She did the best
she did the best she
could.
Yeah. You know. And I appreciate that. I
So
don't.
did you live there a long time?
We lived in Washington for the rest of my life until I moved to LA to pursue my music career at 21.
Dang.
Yeah.
And then did you go to college or anything after high school? Or I assume you went.
I had those coffee shops in Pullman.
Oh right,
that was
right.
That was
in Pullman.
That was that was the college town
that
my aunt was going to, and my mom eventually moved us to.
And were you like the newspaper guy when you were 14 and all these other entrepreneurial things?
From 5th grade.
Yeah,
I
11.
was delivering
Sorry,
papers from 5th
or
grade.
10.
No, third grade. I had both an afternoon route and a morning route. There's a video, you can find it online, of me talking about my paper routes and how I schemed everybody and I built a paper route empire for 2 newspapers on all these kids' routes. But paper routes were definitely my first bit of income. And as a poor kid who had nothing, absolutely nothing. To be able to find a way to make money myself, I mean, that really gave me a taste of what it could be like to be in charge of your income. You know? And that's why I think entrepreneurship became so interesting to me, because I was in control of it.
Man, what a fascinating journey of coming from this kind of conservative background, kind of rejecting faith in church, coming back around, rejecting it again in a different way, and just finding grace for your especially your mother, it seems like, and even your siblings and your father. And how did that? But you eventually reconnected with him, right? Because you went back and forth a little bit from California to Washington, or just summers a little bit, or
I did. Yeah, we were always connected in some way. Like one thing my mom did, which may sound weird, is that even though she left him, right, and she moved us as far away from him as she possibly could.
Right.
She never talked bad about him. Right. Or I could tell that she didn't like him. But I think that her hope and my hope as a kid was that at some point he would turn his shit around and he would be someone that we could count on, or at least have a relationship with. And I know that she did that with a great amount of hesitation and pain. But she would allow us to call him. She would try and arrange for us to see him. Quite often that would end in violence, unfortunately. But in 7th grade, I did decide to go live with him for a year.
Oh, dang.
And it was terrible. It was
mostly you did it because you just wanted to have a relationship with your dad.
My dad.
Yeah, I get it. I can't even imagine because my dad was just always right there.
Yeah.
He's a pain in my ass, but to be absent that, I can't imagine that either.
Yeah, I just wanted my dad.
And it was not good.
It was not good. It was not good. He drank the whole time. He never worked. He fought with my stepmom. He punched holes in walls.
How did he stay alive? Was he on?
He didn't stay alive very long, but he got on Social Security disability because his liver damage was so bad.
Right. Sorry, I have this self-inflicted medical thing.
Yeah, I know. And then he lived off his wife. She was a bank teller. I mean, she wasn't rich or anything.
Right.
I mean, they were solidly
living.
lower middle class,
Right.
And that's they survived.
Yeah.
My dad was not very kind to her either. He stole her money and
Yeah.
for his drugs
So
and
it goes.
liquor.
Where's your mom now?
My mom's in Denver.
Okay.
She moved there after my first son was born, right after. And that's a great story too. Too long for this podcast, but I'll just say that my mother showed through her actions, never her words. My mom never came to me and apologized per se, but I know that my mom is remorseful about our lives because later my mom would give us up. We ended up in foster care.
Oh, dang.
We would go back and live with our family in California.
Oh, wow.
She struggled a lot. My mom
She
was
struggled with addiction too, or
not
alcohol?
addiction, mental health problems.
Mental health
yeah,
too.
definitely
Gotcha.
mental health problems.
Yep.
And it was tough. It wasn't like my mom left my dad and then things were rosy.
Right.
It was my mom left my dad and then we lived in poverty.
Chaos continued
and
for a long
yes,
time.
exactly. And my mom suffered and my dad made things hard. My dad called the CPS and would tell them my mom was abusing us.
Were
even
you
if she
like a
wasn't.
songwriter too, as this
No.
16-year-old
No,
kid that wants to go to LA?
When I left California, I started writing songs.
Okay.
When I was in California, because my dad was a guitar player and singer, and so he
Yeah.
kind of taught me a little bit. And yeah, that songwriting kind of, they say it's an outlet.
I mean, that seems like the foundation for a songwriting
Yes,
career, right?
Absolutely. But yeah, my mom struggled, and so by the time my wife was pregnant with our first son, we still didn't have a good relationship. But she told me, I'm going to come to Denver, whatever. She came to Denver and committed herself to
Stuck
me,
it
my
out,
son, and my
like-
family.
Well, you're the best thing she's got going. Or maybe
Yeah.
you got brothers still?
One
That
brother
are around.
passed away
Yeah.
about 8 years ago. My other brother, Jay, he just moved back here actually from Seattle. So now
Okay.
we're all here.
Does he have kids too? Or?
He does have a daughter. She's back
Okay.
in Seattle. Yeah. But yeah, my mom showed her commitment to me and my family and has been with us for 18 years. And I'm happy to say I can count on my mom for anything.
That's cool.
She's it's kind of crazy to say, and she might not believe it, but, she's one of my best friends.
Yeah.
And
If you need somebody, she's
yeah.
your first phone number.
fuck, man. Sometimes I don't even have to call her. She's just like, hey, I know you have this. I'm showing up.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing. And this is what I tell in my talk, the time traveler talk that I do about as long as there's life, there's hope. And there's debate on who originally said that, but it's often attributed to the Dalai Lama. But where there's life, there's hope. And so when people are talking to me about similar situations that they've been in and they
Yeah.
say things to me like, oh, it's unforgivable, I would never forgive my mom, or I would never forgive my brother, outside of like some kind of weird
Right.
sexual crime or something. I
Right.
said, don't be so quick to say that,
Yeah.
because where there's life, there's hope. And so long as my mom was alive and my brother was alive, I believed that there was always a chance for some kind of reconciliation.
That's really cool.
And I got the best of it from both my brother and my mom.
Yeah. Sounds
And
like it.
it's awesome.
That's really cool. Let me ask about your kids just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
They're 16 and 18 now. One of my things on the Loco Experience is I like to do one-word descriptions of the children
Okay.
of each.
Yeah.
So would you care to endure that challenge of mentioning maybe your older child by name and then giving a one-word description and expand beyond that?
Yes. Henry, serious.
Serious.
Yes.
Henry the Serious.
Yes. Benjamin, hilarious.
Benjamin the Hilarious. That's funny that
Yes.
they're so diabolically opposed.
Yes.
Diametrically opposed is
Yes.
actually, although diabolically might be.
Yeah.
That was God doing
Yeah.
that to you, putting them so diabolically opposed to
Yeah.
each other.
I mean, as a sociologist, right, we talk about nature and nurture, and my kids had both, me and their mom,
Sure.
or my wife growing up, and same circumstances and everything, but they are very different
Yeah.
boys, but deeply appreciative and best friends with each other, but very different personalities.
They're entering the world, the adult world, at an interesting time with
Yeah.
AI making huge strides, and maybe it'll, like, all the coders are already like that learn to code
Yeah.
coal miner.
Yeah.
It doesn't really work anymore. What's your encouragement both for them and for other young people in their 16 to 20 figuring out what they're going to set their pointer toward.
As it relates to AI or just life
As
in
it relates
general?
to just life in general. Like,
Well,
it's an interesting time, though,
yeah.
because of so much AI. It's going to be,
Yeah.
I think, probably disruptive to a lot of
Yeah.
career paths.
You know, I could give two shits about AI. I
Really?
give two shits about video games.
All
I give
right.
two shits about violence on TV. I'm just not a big subscriber to the idea that all of these things are going to shape entirely the direction of your children. Because we've seen this throughout history, right?
Sure.
Records and music and pot and all
Yeah,
sorts of
yeah.
stuff. I mean, every generation has parents who are worried that their kids are going to be fucked up by one thing or the other. So I've tried not to put too much emphasis on that. The thing I do put emphasis on with my kids, and I think maybe it's the difference between my kids and other kids, or the reason why I'm not worried about all this other shit, is because I've always encouraged my kids to follow their dreams and to think about a life and a career that is your passion. And so what we say in our family is there's no plan B. So whatever it was that you said you want, you know how this is. I don't know if you have kids. Do you have kids?
No kids. No.
Okay. Well, you've probably heard these stories. You know, when a kid's little and in kindergarten, and the teacher says, "What do you want to be when you grow up?"
Sure.
And all the parents are around in a circle, eagerly waiting to see what they
right.
say. You know, Molly raises her hand
Astronaut,
and
yeah.
says, "President, astronaut."
right.
Everyone says, "Oh yes, you can do that. You can do that." Right. By third grade, they're starting to question that, and by fifth or sixth grade, they're definitely telling, "Well, you might be an astronaut, but you should have a plan B." Also,
Right.
what are you going to fall back on? Right.
Yeah.
And I hated that.
Interesting.
I hated
Okay.
that as a kid. Not that my mother ever did that to me, but everybody else questioned me because I wanted to be a rock star. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I
Sure.
wanted to be a writer. You know, I had these things that I felt very passionately about. And by the time I did return to Denver to go to college, it wasn't because I thought that was the next best thing for me. The truth is, I believed everybody who had told me that because my coffee shops had failed, my skateboard shop had failed, and my music career had failed, that I wasn't cut out for entrepreneurship, and what I needed to do was go to college and get a real job like everybody else. And the funny thing is within, you know, a month of going to real college like
Right.
everybody else, I made more money than I'd ever made in my life,
Right.
because I decided to be an entrepreneur again, right?
Fascinating.
So in my family, we always talk about no plan B.
Yeah.
And so when my kids have had these dreams of what they want to do, we encourage them to do that. And what that does is it gives them a focus that's different from everybody else's. Where AI and video games and violent movies might
Right.
become a distraction, my kids know what they want to do, and they know what the risk and consequences are from diverging from that path, which is you don't get to do what you want to do if you let all these other things get in the way, including
Well, you can
drugs and
change-
alcohol.
Change what you want to do, probably.
And you always can change it too. Yeah, they've
Right.
definitely had changes. But you know, my son Henry the Serious, which is
Yes.
a very good name for him, is going to be a professional baseball player,
Oh.
and he has known that for almost his entire life. And
Does he eat meat?
does he what?
Eat meat?
He does eat.
Okay, good. Keep eating meat, Henry.
Although for a while there he was vegetarian when I first started, because Henry the Serious is also Henry the Daddy's Boy, which I proudly say. But when I went vegetarian,
fair.
he's like, I'll do it too. And so for 5 years he was.
Oh, wow.
And then he started saying, "Look, Dad, I'm not as big as the other kids. I think I need to start eating meat." I said,
Yeah.
"You do whatever you want. I
Right,
don't
right.
care. I never made you be a vegetarian." But anyway, and so, you know, he played varsity baseball his last 2 years of high school. He's a team captain on his club team. He's a starting shortstop, and now he has a college scholarship.
Nice.
And he's going to Seattle this summer to go play college baseball. So that's it. So I don't ever tell Henry, "Oh, well, you better have a backup plan."
Well, what if he doesn't?
Doesn't-
Then he just navigates, right?
Yeah.
Like it doesn't mean he's a failure.
Like
It
you
doesn't
said,
mean-
I can get my PhD anytime. He can
Right.
go back to school anytime.
Right.
But you can only be a baseball player
right.
for.
So push hard at that.
That's right.
If your window is open.
That's right. And then Benjamin the Hilarious is a extremely talented downhill skier and downhill mountain
Oh, dang.
biker. And extrememely talented.
Something that doesn't require fear might be a good job.
Well, he has fear, thank God.
Well, just enough.
Just enough, though, right? He's smart, but he's dedicated and passionate, and so that's his plan.
Interesting.
He wants to ride mountain bikes in college. He wants to get a scholarship, just like his brother, and he wants to be outdoors. And the only other place he wants to go is Canada, right? But his plan for that is to find a Canadian woman to marry.
Well,
so,
you know,
but
there might be quite a few of those in the market in the near future
There
that are
could
like,
be.
"Hey, can you get me into America?"
if anyone still wants to come here.
Oh, before I change topic, sometimes we like to hit current events.
Sure.
And we've got like the LA riots
Mm-hmm.
part 4 or whatever it is
Yeah.
by now, going
Yeah.
on like right now.
Yeah.
As a libertarian,
Yeah.
kind of leaning, probably
Not leaning full on.
I would suspect a Trump skeptic, but also a Gavin Newsom non-fan. Like, what do you think about this whole like bitch fight over the like military and like federal versus state powers and what's going on with all that?
It's all theater.
Yeah,
It's all theater.
It's a puppet show.
It's a puppet show.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not to say that people aren't angry and for
Suffering
good reason
and
and
whatever.
suffering, absolutely, and they have a right to get out in the streets and protest. I think the protests turn now from not just so much an examination of immigrant rights and also an examination of adherence to the law, right? I think on both sides there are questions.
Right. What
to
is
be
due
asked and
process in this
answered,
situation?
right? And what does it mean to break into a country? Because
Right.
that also happens.
What due process is appropriate if you just come in and set up?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. But I think what people are pissed off about now, myself included, is the militarization of the whole thing and the test that Trump has created as to what people will tolerate. And I mean, I am 47 years old. I have never.
Are you really?
Oh yeah.
I thought you were younger than that.
Yeah. Oil of valet twice a day.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I have never seen the Marines come into a city and try and enforce, or actually try and push back protesters. To me, that's crazy, and to me, that's crossed.
That's theater.
I mean, there's
like
been
we
a-
got plenty
right.
of National Guard. We
There-
don't need to.
and we don't
freaking
even
bring in
need the
Marines.
National Guard. I mean, I watched the mayor's press conference last night.
It was pretty hairy. Like, they didn't
Well-
have a handle on it. for
Well,
sure.
but the National Guard are only protecting 2 federal buildings in LA. They're not actually out there on the line with the police
maybe
officers.
so, yeah.
So it's theater, right?
It is
it's
theater,
total.
then, if that's
it's
really the case.
It's total theater.
But I don't know if, like, are you right about that? Or are you wrong about that? There's no media.
But
you can't know.
here's the fucking thing, right? Like, as a libertarian, I don't believe in borders. You know, like I mean,
that
like,
far libertarian.
Yeah, I mean, like I believe people are people, right? And they deserve the individual respect.
Yeah.
And I think
So then there should be nation states. So, like, Bitcoin for everybody. And just,
Bitcoin
like,
for everybody, but I'm not a big Bitcoin guy either. I sold mine too because I just couldn't find any fucking utility in it, right? And I made a lot of money
Yeah.
in crypto, but I'm just like, when does this actually do something?
Right.
But with regard to people, like, no, I believe in nations, right? I believe in cultures. I believe in laws, right? I believe that we
Yeah.
can get an agreement about those things. I also believe that somebody can come here and raise their hand and say, I'm willing to be in agreement of those things.
Yeah.
What I don't believe in is that somebody can come here and then say, I'm in agreement of those things so long as you pay for me to come here,
Right.
or pay for me, whatever. You know, I'm
Well, I think as a libertarian leaning, but also free market economist, like, I love the idea of the gold card,
sure.
like the gold green card.
Yeah.
Like, it should be like to me, it should be like if it should be just as important to become a part of America as it is to become a part of my team here
Yeah.
at Loco Think Tank.
Yeah.
Like, you should almost have to do an application.
Yeah.
I should start
Because
charging people to apply.
You have to adopt a culture, right?
Yeah.
Like all a country is a set of beliefs,
Sure.
right? But ours is so fractured right now.
Right,
it's
right.
really hard
There
to
isn't
say
really a
what
set of
that
beliefs,
is,
yeah.
right? And even if we can't agree on what the set of beliefs is, we should be able to agree that nobody should be responsible for anybody else's this, that, or the other thing. The thing that has driven me crazy about locally, like about this, is Mike Johnston, the mayor of Denver, who happened to be my son's flag football coach for a season or two also. But I don't think that one man should be able to decide to spend $325 million to give to illegal immigrants to make their illegal transition to the United States and Denver easier
And
without
bankrupt the city of Denver virtually.
without a vote.
Right.
You know, without a vote, it's this executive power that's fucking nuts to me.
At the local level and at the
Federal
national level.
Yeah,
Executive
exactly.
power is out of control.
It's out of control. It's out of control. And I say all that because I want to remind people I don't want to be canceled with, I don't give a fuck who comes here. Like, so long as
Fair.
like I don't I love it.
Right.
You know, there's a lot of value from the diversity that immigrants bring.
Tons. Yeah.
It's just
But-
who's
but
footing the bill?
Application with a fee seems like way better than bringing a bunch of Venezuelan prisoners
Yeah.
up here.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think
Which I
probably
think is
too many of them are.
I think too many of them are, but they're the exception to the rule.
Some, but if you're Venezuela and you're like, those guys are complete assholes, and you know that they've been like letting 100,000 illegal immigrants across the border every month or every week or whatever.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you empty your mental asylums?
No,
into the country?
I agree. And when you have people like
Like,
Mike
they're
Johnston,
wishing,
who's
wishing they had more mental
No,
asylum
of
patients. They're
course.
like, here, take them all,
Yeah.
take them all.
No, and when we're incentivizing
Right.
And you can
You're like,
say,
you can stay in the hotel in New York City?
yeah, you can call it support or whatever you want, but it is incentivizing people to come. It's saying, look, if you come, your journey may be arduous, but your arrival will be cake.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And
yeah,
like,
yeah.
and then once
so we
you,
should not be doing any of that.
once
Like,
no.
and to the extent that all the NGOs, like,
no.
here's how you register to vote.
Yeah, no. You know, I liked the system of sponsorship that existed. You know,
Yeah.
in which like you could bring people over, but you know your family at a
You kind
restaurant.
of got to
or
vouch
this.
for them virtually.
Yeah, you vouch for them. You say, hey, I'm going to give you employment and
Yep,
stuff
yep.
like that. You know, I think that was a good system.
It's intriguing for sure.
For sure. Yeah,
Let's hit the final segment.
do it.
The Loco Experience.
Yeah.
The craziest story that you're willing to share
Yeah.
with our listeners.
I mean, I don't know if it's the craziest, but it is a crazy story.
Is it a valet experience?
It's a valet
Okay,
experience.
let's hear it.
All right. I think my first year working down there was maybe the year that the NBA All-Star game was in Denver.
Okay.
Okay. I think Carmelo Anthony played for us. Who was the guy that came from the Sixers?
Barkley?
No.
that's later.
The shorter
Earlier.
guy, Allen Iverson.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So it was during that time, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Big suits, big shorts, fucking, you know, like it was that time.
Yeah.
And so I'm working down in Cherry Creek, and everybody's coming down there who's anybody, right?
Right,
And they're
right.
parking all sorts of crazy cars. And so this guy comes up and he's got a Ferrari. He parks it. I always leave the Ferraris in front. He goes inside, parties with his friends until the game's about to start. He comes back outside and he says, hey, I'm actually going to get a ride to the All-Star game with my friends. Can you just put my Ferrari in the garage and I will come back and pick it up tomorrow? I said, I can put your Ferrari in the garage, but tomorrow was like Sunday or something like that. I said, you can't come back and pick it up tomorrow because the garage will lock and it won't open up again until Monday.
Okay.
And he said, okay, no problem. Take it home. I said, what?
Okay.
He said, just take it home. Give me your cell phone number. I'll call you tomorrow. I'll pick it up from you tomorrow.
I like it.
Now, granted, I lived at the church at this time.
Right, you're like barely across the street.
Okay, and I've already got this Mercedes from my deal with Mercedes, right? And so I already look weird. Everyone already thinks I'm a drug dealer.
Right, you live in the basement of the church.
I live in the basement of the church. Outside the basement door, I have my Mercedes parked. I also had a 4Runner that I arrived in Denver with, and now this guy wants me to bring his freaking Ferrari. Yeah. I said, man, I don't know if I feel comfortable with that. He said, look, I'll give you a big tip. Just take it home. I'll call you tomorrow. I'll come to wherever you are. I'll pick it up. I said, okay, sounds good. I take this Ferrari home to the church. He doesn't call. I drive it back the next day. He never comes. I don't have this guy's name, his number, or anything.
Damn.
For a week, I drive this Ferrari back and forth from
Because you want it to be there at
the
work,
restaurant. Yes,
if he gets here.
exactly, from the restaurant back to my house. Finally, my next day off, which was a week later, it was like a Sunday. I'm laying around in bed, and my boss calls me, and he's like pissed off, and he's like, "Dude, Travis, where the hell's this guy's Ferrari?" I'm like, "It's at my house." He's like, "Why the fuck is it at your house?" I'm like, "He told me to take it." And he's like, "Well, he's pissed. You got to get down here right now and bring that fucking Ferrari back." I was like, "Okay, I will." So I
That
rushed.
dude forgot completely.
I don't know what
And
he did.
this was previous to your business, right? Because
Yeah, this is
You're-
pretty.
you're-
I had my valet ads company.
okay, you
yeah,
did.
yeah. So I was doing fine, but like,
Okay.
I'm still working because I met
right.
a lot of great people there.
Right.
So
well, you at least had some credibility with the owner of the valet business.
Yes, right.
by this point.
He knew I wasn't a criminal.
Right.
Although I did crash a Hummer that I had to pay for,
Yeah.
but that was an accident. Anyway, so yeah, I drive back down there. The guy never comes out to see me.
Okay.
Okay, I wait in the restaurant thinking I'm finally going to get this massive tip.
Right.
No, he walks out the other door, drives the car off. I never see him again.
No shit.
That was the craziest story. So I owned a Ferrari Spider for 1 week.
You should have. What's that? Tulo or what's the rental thing?
Turo.
Turo. Yeah,
Way
you should have
before
Turo.
Turo. Way before Turo.
You could have given your friends like, "Hey, $100 for 2 hours." Just kidding.
Yeah, but yeah,
If you knew he was going to stiff you,
I would have taken
might
it all over town.
right? I put
All
4,000
over
miles.
town.
It would have been like
Oh,
Ferris Bueller's Day
Bueller,
Off.
Exactly. But I was scared to death. I remember like watching it was parked under a tree and just like being like, "Oh my god, I hope
Shit,
nothing
it's gonna be
falls
sap
on this
on there in
thing."
the morning.
Yeah, exactly.
whatever.
It was so much responsibility for a kid my age. There was so much that could.
Oh, right. That's your
Like I'm 24.
Right, and plus you've been like a 2-time loser on coffee shops
Yeah.
and skateboard
Yeah.
shops, and music wasn't
Yeah,
going your way.
That's right. That's right. But it gave me a taste of the fine life.
That's right. That's right. What's cool though is that you've never been pursuing the fine life.
Yeah.
You've been
Well,
pursuing value add. You know,
Yeah,
you wanted to
yeah,
be comfortable. You wanted to be
Yeah.
secure. I think
Yeah.
after such a tumultuous childhood, but
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting way you got dumped into the fine life.
Yeah.
You barely had a spoonful of it your whole life.
Oh, I know.
And all of a sudden you're valeting
That's
for
exactly it.
freaking Kobe Bryant and
Yeah.
and,
And making tens of thousands of dollars selling valet tickets.
Right.
And, I mean, it was a great time.
what a fascinating spot.
Yeah, sitting courtside, and I mean, it was a great time.
Well, this was a fun conversation.
Yeah, no, it was.
If people want to find you, do you want to just look you up on LinkedIn, or is there a
my
best way?
website is travisluther.com.
Okay.
I
Easy
got a
enough.
lot of stuff there, but I post a lot of my stuff on Instagram. So
Instagram.
it's at TravisScottLuther.com.
Okay.
I was the first Travis Scott, just so you know.
Oh,
Now there's a
nice.
big rapper, and everyone's like, your name's
Right.
Travis Scott. But yeah, at TravisScottLuther.com. I post my research findings there.
Oh, really? On Instagram?
Yeah, my self-help stuff.
Seems like a weird place for
I
that.
know. That's where I have the most followers. I get the most
You're
engagement.
an
So
Instagrammer.
I've stuck with it. Yeah.
I dig it. My friend's mom was out for her grandson's graduation, and her handle on Instagram is Instagrammy.
Oh, nice. That's awesome.
Anyway, I digress. Love you, Barb, if you hear this. Travis, thanks for being here.
Of course. Thanks for
And
having me.
look forward to our next conversation.
Yeah, this is awesome.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Boom, right at 5.